What is up, hotties? Welcome back to another episode of Stay Hot. I'm Blaiden Kirk, joined as always by my two favorite co-hosts of all time, Matthew Sponhour and Theo Ash. And today, we've got a very special episode giving you our top 10 quarterbacks of all time. Matt.
This is an incredibly serious episode. I mean, it's possibly the most serious episode we've done. Quarterbacks are obviously the most serious position. Top 10s are the most serious topic. It doesn't get any bigger than this. It's a pretty hard list to make. There's a lot that you have to weight. And as I was going through it, I was asking myself, what are Theo and Blaiden's hottest takes going to be? What are like the craziest things that they're going to do? With Blaiden, there was only one thing I could guess, which is that somehow, some way, the placement of Otto Graham has probably nuked the entire list, either through maybe you've just left him off entirely. Maybe you've like gotten out of it and said I'm only doing post Super Bowl era guys, so I don't even have to think about it. Or maybe you have ranked him very highly and then built the rest of your philosophy around like, I value the old guys a ton, count the all pros. Yes, I have Sid Luckman at 7. Yes, I have Sammy Baugh at 9. Stuff like that. And then it's like, if you give that take, it's a little hard to argue against because Sid Luckman, Sammy Baugh, they were playing before the football was, it is now. It changed in 41. They entered the league in 37, both of them, I believe. Or potentially you just put him as like the only super old guy, which I actually feel like would be a decent balance, but we'll get into that. For Theo, I mean, the easy answer would have been like Favre or Rodgers being really high. And judging by your expression, it's possible that might just be what it is, that you're maybe not both of them, but I could see like Favre being, you're not going to put him in like the tier of guys after Brady, but being like the number one guy after that
Brady.
tier.
This is assuming Theo puts Brady at 1, man.
Here's a gamer, man.
Here's the question. Here's the real question with Theo. Are we going to see 3 Packers quarterbacks on his top 10?
No, there's no third that you could get there with.
You don't think he's going to put Bart Starr?
No, you couldn't do Bart. Bart Starr would be beyond the pale, I'm afraid. I mean, he's a don't grin, bro. That's not funny.
Do you think I'm joking? Like,
So maybe the Packers quarterback stuff was right, but I could also see a world where like Rodgers, I think you can make a really good case for Rodgers being higher than like maybe the comments would be comfortable with or something like that. He truly has had a great career and you can kind of argue for him both ways. I think before we get into our actual list, we got to talk a little bit about philosophy, of course, because you know, we could all agree on who a guy was and what he ended up doing and the type of player that he is, but we might all rank him a little bit differently because a lot of lists like this are just how you weight different aspects, like a guy's peak versus their longevity or how you take into account era. I think the first question is, what did you guys do about age? How old did you guys go before you said, sorry, like I have to start discounting the pre-Super Bowl players? Did you say, screw it, the easiest way is no pre-Super Bowl at all, or?
I think
Super Bowl.
I think Unitas is where I started. I think Johnny Unitas and that championship game against the Giants and all that is kind of where modern quarterbacking maybe not really starts. Maybe that's Sid Luckman. I mean, he was weird to watch if you go back and look what little film there is. You know, he's kind of scrambling around a little bit. He's kind of high flying action, but I remember looking at Unitas for my football Mount Rushmore, which we did on Patreon, and people hadn't really considered the concept of like a 2-minute drill and quarterbacks being important in those scenarios. Like, oh my gosh, you can drive down the field quickly. Oh, when you need a game-winning drive, like the quarterback actually can just throw it down the field quickly instead of running all this time on the clock on the ground. Like Unitas kind of started that. The start of his career when he really got going was so far beyond what the other people were doing in like the 1950s. To me, that kind of marks the start of like maybe the modern era, you can say. I mean, it's certainly gotten a lot more modern now than it was in the 80s and 70s, but
Yeah.
I think anything before Unitas, I didn't really consider too much because he was kind of the GOAT of pre Super Bowl into Super Bowl era. So I just kind of put a
Unitas
pin in it there. And
Unitas definitely gets consideration. Graham definitely gets consideration for me.
plus there's
even though he's a good bit older.
Plus there's integration.
But yeah, that's also.
I mean,
right.
you can't be a white only league and be a top 10 quarterback of all time.
It's hard to argue against that, and I won't. I'm not going to.
No.
Blaiden.
Let's bring on a guest to have play devil's advocate that we should include pre-integration quarterbacks into our ranking here.
It's also, again, it's just difficult. And when you bring up the modern era stuff, I totally agree. Like the 2-minute drill being invented by Unitas and him throwing with like timing and accuracy and testing windows. You know, you go back and look even at the cool like Sid Luckman clips or Sammy Ball clips or whatever, and it just doesn't look the same like it does with Unitas. But even they probably would have felt like they were ushering in, you know, a modern era in the sense that, they changed the ball to make it more aerodynamic so you could actually throw the thing. Right. I think Sid Luckman had a year where he led in passing with 900 yards or something like that. So it turned into a trick play, or it turned from a trick play into obviously a much more serious aspect of the game. So I'm not going to sit here and like pound the table about who we should and shouldn't include in terms of age. And I'm sure that most people listening are probably more hearing about like wanting to hear about the guys that we all know and kind of have an understanding about versus like, well, how do we weight the fact that Sammy Ball was also like a great punter and led the league in interceptions in the sense that he was a safety and was picking like, okay, whatever. I would have Sammy Ball over Sid Luckman for the record, but
fair.
I have two lists, one without older guys and one with just post Super Bowl starting at Unitas as well. So I can do whatever.
That's interesting. I did not make two lists. You're just better than me for that though.
Well, if you want to do the old guys, I don't think anybody like is going to.
Yeah.
How many? Okay. Well, how many do you have?
I have two.
Okay. That's how many I have. I just have Unitas and Autogram on my list.
Oh yeah. Same.
Okay.
Yeah.
I thought Sid Luckman and Sammy Ball were just too old and actually like weren't as consistent as Graham was, even though Graham played in a slightly older league, which I think gives him some credit. And he really, really was about as dominant as you can be. And then Bart Starr was really good, but the Packers were more of a rushing team. And while he was efficient, there's a lot of years where he doesn't even qualify on like Pro Football Reference for a lot of the efficiency stats because he doesn't reach like a minimum number of attempts. So he still, I think he won an MVP one year. Like he was still really, really good, but it was a little bit too much of Starr being like a really high level game manager, it seemed like, rather than him being the driving force.
Yeah. He was really good in Super Bowl I. He was a good scrambler and like super accurate. He was really good. He's a Hall of Famer for a reason. His number is retired for a reason. I think he warrants consideration for the top 10, but yeah, I mean the sweep behind Forrest Gregg was like the number one thing that they were spamming. So I don't know if he had as much on his shoulders as some of the older guys. I just can't watch that much of the older guys. Again, for the Mount Rushmore episode, I was trying to watch some Otto Graham games, and a dog was running out on the field. I saw a dog, and like the game was still going. I was like, I don't know if this.
Hey, bro,
I don't know if he's better than Lamar Jackson, bro.
On the field all the time.
Yeah, and I was just imagining like ranking Autogram. They've got Sammy Ball over John Elway or somebody like that with the crying, laughing emoji or whatnot. Like I just don't know if I want to.
No, I really.
It's like, do I really want to like stand on business for Sammy Ball? Like not really. So yeah, I totally understand. But I think for the record, yeah, I have Graham and Unitas in my top 10 as guys who played before the Super Bowl era. Yeah. And I think if you went to like 20 or 25, Starr, Sid Luckman, Sammy Baugh, and maybe a couple of others would also get on there. But I didn't do all the research on those dudes because I said the very top few, whatever. But Graham, 7-time first team All-Pro, won 7 championships, like really was consistent like that, led in a bunch of super important stats. I think there's a real case to be made for
only Otto Graham and Peyton Manning are the 2 quarterbacks who have the most first team All-Pros, and they both have 7.
Well, he has 3 MVPs too. The issue is that he only gave out an MVP 5 out of the 10 years that he played. So
probably
it's a little tough to tell how many he could have got.
They didn't have the medal to make a trophy 5 of those 10 years, or what? They didn't have.
They were burning down the previous MVPs to give it to another guy and melt a new one for a while there. So
for the war effort, they needed that MVP medal for the war effort. 5 Otto Graham MVPs are in the skies over Normandy.
Well, no. I'm like looking and trying to judge longevity, and never mind the fact that it's a totally different game. Like Tom Brady isn't playing 20 years if he plays in the 40s. Sorry, but then how am I supposed to like ding? I think Sid Luckman for like going to World War II. I'm like, bro, that hurts your longevity, man. Sorry, can't give you grace, dude. Like, you miss the games, you miss a game. I think he went into World War II. But then I go and check his stats, and like it didn't seem like he missed that many games. So maybe it was a short stint, or he went on like a bye week or something. I don't know. But
then you have like Unitas, who played 18 seasons from 56 to 73. But then also like the last 3 of those seasons are basically non-existent football years for him. So like, but he does get some longevity nod. I think he was 10 and 2-1 and 2,000 yards at 37 years old. So
no, Unitas did play for a long time for sure. So I'll keep Unitas on my list. I'll drop Otto Graham and I'll roll with that if that's how we want to do it. Or you can keep Graham, or we can do it however. But I don't want the whole pod to be about like, well,
how do you adjust for era?
Yeah, screw that.
Yeah.
The other 2 big questions.
Go for it.
Yeah, the other big. Well, I'll start. Longevity versus peak is obviously the hardest thing to weight, and like mostly what you're doing, right? Because there's guys who have a great peak, but then kind of fall off sort of quickly, or they have great longevity, but they're never like the best quarterback in the NFL. The way that I've always framed it when doing these all-time discussions, if I could draft a guy and have him for his whole career in his era, who would I take first? Yeah. And I think when you go with that philosophy, it's what a team would really want, I think, is what's most important. And I think, honestly, it weights itself towards longevity a little bit more than maybe the average person would in a list like this. So I feel like I'm a little bit more longevity pilled, but then I get into doing this list and it's like, oof, man, it's kind of tough. And again, I really think like it's harder to play 20 seasons in 1970 than it is now. It's just a different game, and they protect quarterbacks way better. So,
but I think it's also fair to say that I think it's also fair to say that like maybe then modern quarterbacks are just better because they've also gotten to watch the guys before them.
They are, but you got to adjust for era. I think that's kind of a given in this, right? Is that I don't want to like ding these. Like obviously, all the modern guys are way better than all the old guys, or at least on average by a lot in terms of just straight up skill. Same thing with like the NBA or whatnot. But we want to wait within like their era, and because in 2050 that'll be the case. For dudes now. And then playoff performance is the other big one. How important is that to you? How important are rings to you? I view them as as a team accomplishment, of course. Winning a Super Bowl, I think a lot of times there is dudes who will go out and have great games and they won't win because the defense lets them down or a receiver makes a bad play or whatnot. So I don't take those as seriously as I think some people do in terms of like, well, this guy has this many Super Bowls, therefore he has to be this high and whatnot. But how you perform in the playoffs does matter, even if it can be a small sample size. I think there's a number of players who have proven themselves to be someone who can step up routinely, or somebody who has some fatal flaws that can get exposed a little bit more come playoff time. So it's not the end all be all because of the sample size, because to win, it takes a team, it's football. And because when you are on a team that is poor, your B performance is going to get criticized in a loss more than a C performance and a win will, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think that's the big thing. But that's kind of my philosophy, I guess.
I think I'm kind of in the same boat where it really is. I'm trying to look at their careers in sort of an all-encompassing manner. And then if we're splitting hairs, if I'm like, well, these guys are really close, then I might take the guy who's like had the better accolades at that point, or like the better success. But I mean, I have some pretty hot takes as far as where certain guys land against consensus, I feel like. And it goes very much against like the Super Bowl ring mentality of the debate. So
all right, I'm excited to see it then.
I'm excited to get into it. But yeah, Theo, you wanted to start at 1 and work our way down here. And I don't know if we'll do a consensus, just because I feel like there could be some guys who are so split on that it might not really work all that well. But I feel confident in saying that we all have Tom Brady as the greatest quarterback of all time. Theo is already starting to shake his head. I'm kind of...
You don't have Brady at 1?
Nope.
Dude, okay. We've been through this cycle before.
Hold up. I mean, is it Mahomes?
Nope.
Is it Manning?
Yes.
Okay.
I don't know.
That's who I figured.
Behind Manning. He was just...
I love Manning.
Playoffs.
He was, I mean, he was not great in the playoffs, especially at the beginning of his career. Like, it started as a complete disaster. I mean, it started as a Herbert level what if, right? Like, to an even greater extent. But at the end of the day, I mean, he does have 2 Super Bowls, and he's been to 4 Super Bowls with 4 different head coaches, which makes him pretty bulletproof, I feel like. With Brady, I guess he's been to Super Bowls with 2 different head coaches, which is pretty good. But like, I look at Montana, he was always there with Bill Walsh, or, you know, Chuck Noll and Terry Bradshaw. Like, this ecosystem kind of keeps on keeping on, and it gets a little bit tough to, you know, parse, you know, who deserves the credit, who deserves, you know, who's the driving force, who's the engine. But with Peyton, with all the different, I mean, he's got 5 MVPs, and he finished top 3, I think, 4 other times. He was second in a year that a running back won, right? So he's creating a lot of value over and over and over and over and over again. And I mean, with rings and with these playoff success things, like, I'm kind of a caricature of myself with this list. I was trying to kind of throw it out the window and not be too end result oriented when it comes to a team. I kind of sketched out when I looked at my process, and I'm like, how am I going to decide who's the best here? I sketched out kids playing kickball, and I was like, how would I rank the top kickball kids? Like, if that was my scouting assignment, I'd have to just watch them play kickball. Like, I don't know if I would track the wins, or I would track the championships. I think I would just have to watch. So that was kind of my thought. And when I watched Peyton Manning kind of over the years, and especially his years on the Colts, it's really mind boggling the extent to which he has his foot on the gas pedal, and the extent to which he is throwing hole shots, splitting safeties between them. Like, he is just all gas all the time, drifting away from blitz, throwing posts. I think his arm is really underrated. I think it was elite, like, really great velocity, ability to fade away and throw and still get it downfield. And the ability for him to be as efficient kind of as he was, as good as he was early, and to have overall the amount of wins. I mean, he ended his career with more wins than anybody, all the records, right? And he has rings. So I was just like, I think that this guy was a planet kind of in and of himself, maybe more than Brady was. His ability to rip off explosive plays and chunk yardage and throw tight window things downfield and just move you up and down the field is pretty unmatched. I know analytics love Peyton Manning, like the yards per attempt.
Yeah.
like GOAT, DVOA, GOAT, like EPA per play, GOAT. Like if you look at all of these statistics, like Peyton is at the top. So I thought I wanted kind of a different spin on the list, and I just kind of wanted to watch some of these old games on NFL Throwback and see who impressed me the most. And we'll get to Brady when we get to Brady. And really, I don't want to, like, I get it, man. I get it. I get it. He played for so long. He was so much better when he was 45 than anybody else at 45. But I kind of played with this idea in my head of, do are GOAT cases better at the end or better at the beginning? Like, so many of these guys got off to such unbelievable starts to their careers with, MVPs and historic paces right at the beginning, and then, maybe broke down a little bit more than Brady at the end. But like, man, what about those starts? Like, what about those guys who just stepped into NFL football and just lit the league on fire to an extent we'd never seen before? Like, that wasn't Tom Brady at all. He aged like a wine, and eventually it just became this thing where he played forever and ever and ever, and played with such a great coach and such a great tight end and such a great wide receiver, and where it was able to put up numbers with some unbelievable luck. Like, it's not all luck with him at all, but like, yeah, it is fortunate that some of the things went down the way they did. Like, He's at the forefront of some absolutely crazy penalties and some crazy moments. So I just thought with Peyton, like, trying to tune out all the noise and who is just the best for a really long time. I do think Peyton always had a bit of an edge over Brady, and then Brady kind of caught him at the end. But I put Manning at number one on my list for these reasons. If I could guarantee Brady's career goes the same way, like in any situation, if I could guarantee in any era that he plays as long as he did and was as good as he did at 45, I think, like, obviously, undeniably, he had the best career. He had the GOATest career. Like, you can't even argue that. But in terms of skill level at their peak and combining that with all the accolades and all the rings and everything else, I think Peyton holds up, and I put him at number one.
I was a Manning GOAT guy for a while. You know this, Theo, but for all the like, oh, well, Peyton's arm was underrated. Like, Brady, I think, has also become underrated as far as what his skill was at the quarterback position because he was drafted late, right? And you read his like scouting report, it's all about how his physical tools suck. But then when you watch him throw, like, oh, he does have a good arm. Like, he is ripping the ball downfield. He does have one of the bigger arms in the NFL. He is really accurate.
Oh, yeah. I mean,
he does manage the pocket at a really high level. Like, all of this stuff is also true for Tom Brady, and he did it until he was 45, right? And he suffered, like, an awful knee ACL injury back when, like, it wasn't common to come back from an ACL at such like ridiculous pace, and came back and was still the best one of the best quarterbacks in football.
He was better. He was better after.
Time. Right.
He wasn't anywhere close to like a GOAT debate guy before. I mean, he just had that great season in 2007, and he had a lot of rings, but he wasn't like this sort of consistent in the MVP race every single year type of dude that maybe you would expect. That was more afterwards. I have a lot to say about some of the points that you made. Manning was really great for a long time, and to spoil my list, he is number two.
He's number two on mine as well.
Because of the longevity, because of how consistent he was in the regular season, and not only consistent, but in the sense that, like, oh, he always led a pretty dang good offense. Like, no, he was like always very, very high in the MVP race, and that's incredibly difficult to do. Mm-hmm. But I don't think that Peyton is somebody I really flag as like not having offensive help. I think for most of his career, he had a ton of weapons. So the fact that he had like different, head coaches, it does not move the needle for me a ton in terms of like Peyton was able to do it with anybody, because I honestly believe that once Brady got into his prime, I think that he would have been able to do it with a lot of people. One thing you do learn going through this list, and part of what makes it so tough, is that the help and the supporting cast matters so much. I mean, Brady is a great example. Really not like an awesome season. The counting stats in the 2010s especially are always good, and if you throw 600 times, it'll always look good. But the 2019 Patriots were just kind of out of ammo at receiver. And a big part of the reason why I think, Brady is so untouchable now is because he decided to say, screw that, I'm leaving. I'm going to go somewhere where there's receivers where I can go and play right now.
And same with Manning, which is it was a bit fortunate because he got his neck fused and I think they released him, right? So it was kind of, but man, when he got to Denver, Tebow had won a playoff game. Demaryius Thomas was looking like a superstar. Like they had so many weapons everywhere.
They had a ton of weapons. Yeah. So that's not to say that Manning was in as good of a situation as Brady, because ultimately Brady's big break is that he got to play on a bunch of great defenses throughout his career, and he got to go on a lot of potential playoff runs with those. Whereas I think there's a lot of quarterbacks on this list where the defense falls apart and it's really, really tough to put together a big Super Bowl run when that's the case. Not impossible, but it's just really, really difficult. And when that's the case, not only do you not get the opportunity to put together that Super Bowl run, even if we know you had a great game, it's not the same. You don't get the same level of credit. But on top of that, like I said earlier, if you have a B+ performance and a loss, well, why wasn't it an A+? Why did you make this throw? With Brady, it's not that he doesn't have his bad moments, but he's great, and then he gets to be in it every single year because of those Belichick defenses. So you remember the good breaks of a guy that won 7 Super Bowls more so than the bad breaks, right? Because he had his tough moments, like I said it before, but in 2015 AFC Championship game, like a missed extra point leads to a 2-point conversion that he doesn't get. Or, in 2017, maybe the best example, okay, they play the Eagles. He has his very best Super Bowl. He loses that game and fumbles at the end, but he wins multiple Super Bowls where the offense puts up 13 points. Yeah. So it's kind of a fickle thing. It's not to say that Brady isn't a good play. The helmet catch can happen to you, but then if you get back enough, then an interception while the Seahawks are on the goal line will happen to you. So it really, I think in the game stuff, when you're in it that much, people remember him as lucky, or I've said this about Mahomes too. It's starting to come that they'll remember him as lucky if you win enough, but really, I just think the big break is being in a good overall situation made by Bill Belichick. And Belichick's lucky to have him on some level,
Yes.
Oh, yeah. Sorry, here's a Peyton stat for you. I'm kind of disrupting the flow here. I'm looking at Sports Info, or not Sports Info, it's Pro Football Reference's success rate stat. And Montana has 2 years where he led the league in success rate, or had the highest rate of productive plays. Mahomes has 2 seasons where he's led that stat in success rate. Brady has 2. Dan Marino has 2. From 2003 to 2012, Manning led it every year except for 2. 2007.
Except for the 2 that Brady got.
And 2011
years.
2011 when he didn't play because of his neck issue. Every other year, he led the league in success rate. Like, that's how efficient that he was. Like, that's how much of an analytics darling he is, where imagine year after year after year after year playing in a league that has Brett Favre and a league that has Ben Roethlisberger and Drew Brees but every year at the top of that stat, who is having the success rate? Who is just moving the chains? You'd think it's Brady, right? He's the ultimate, he just, maybe he doesn't have the big play, but he has the successful play. He makes the right play. He takes the check down and it gets 6 yards on 1st and 10. Well, Peyton had a higher rate of those types of plays over the course of his career to a level never before seen, never even close to before seen. So I'm just interjecting clumsily with that stat. But
the next thing that I wanted to touch on is Brady's longevity. I think you bring up a fair point that kind of early on Brady was winning, he wasn't that great in the first Super Bowl run. He won Super Bowl MVP, but they went up against a great offense that they held to just, 13 points or 17 points, my mistake. And they had a pick 6 in that game, and he put together a drive at the end. And it's not that he wasn't good, but there was a level of he's the backup sort of coming in and trying to keep things steady. And it took some breaks. I don't disagree with that, but even if I take that into account, the next year he comes out and he leads the league in passing touchdowns. And even if I say, well, that's kind of a volume stat. And one thing that I will say for a lot of this, I think that yards and touchdowns, big time volume stats.
Yeah.
I'm not as huge on those in terms of like determining a player's value as maybe I think some people would be. I think that having a lot of attempts can sometimes be the nature of the offense rather than a representative of how good a player is. Or like if you have a great defense, then that can put you in a better situation. It's like that's good for fantasy, but what also is good for fantasy is like playing on a horrible team that gets down a lot, and then you get the right game script to throw a ton. That doesn't really move the needle for me personally. So it's not that they don't matter, but it's just something to keep in mind.
I have two exceptions to that rule, but I generally agree.
I think that's fair. But even then, when I look at Brady's longevity, in 2003 he had a top 3 MVP finish, and in 2021 he had a top 3 MVP finish. I don't think that anybody comes close to matching how good he was for how long he was good. I think his peak is up there with anybody statistically. It's one of the all-time great quarterback seasons. I think the playoff success is good. I could say that he's not like some perfect playoff player. He was just in it all the time, but I don't know if anybody is really a perfect playoff player. They're just like, in the mix a lot. I mean, there's some guys who are really, really special, but for as often as Brady was in, I think most guys would just have their good and their bad moments over the course of 20 years. And obviously with Brady, 7 rank, like it's way more good than bad. So if there was one guy I would draft, I would say this guy's going to give me a great peak. He's going to be in the MVP race, year in and year out relatively consistently for almost 2 straight decades. I don't know if anybody else can match that. And I would take him on top of the fact that then the all-time stats he leads in, the rings he leads in, all this type of stuff. So Brady, to me, he could have like 3 Super Bowls. I'll put it this way. He could have 3 Super Bowls, and I still think he would be my number 1.
I agree. Just like I was a Manning GOAT person for the longest time, and it wasn't that Brady got another ring. Like I had Manning when it was 6 Super Bowls, and then he just kept playing. He just played for like another 4 years after. I'm just like, dude, and he was still like one of the best. He was like a top 5, top 10 quarterback for all those years. I'm just like, yeah, you just can't argue this anymore.
And he really was great down the stretch. I mean, he didn't play very much longer past like when he was, truly one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. The other thing, I think Manning's playoff performances are pretty bad, honestly. I think they're too bad for me to just say it doesn't matter at all. It's a really big sample size with him because he was so good, and I'm not doubting the regular season efficiency. But when we talk about his 2 rings, I'll say this. I'm not even going to hate on him. 2015, whatever, like I think that this is why I believe that rings are fickle, right? Because 2015 Peyton Manning has got to be the worst quarterback to start in a Super Bowl, and yet somehow they still win, right? But he's horrible. I won't hold that against him because he was super duper psycho washed at that point, and his arm had just fallen apart. There's only so much you can do about that. But even in 2006, he had 3 touchdowns to 7 interceptions throughout that playoff run. It wasn't some great moment. I mean, he had a lot of really tough situations. I mean, in 2013, he makes the Super Bowl. I know it's against a great defense, but he had a great historical offense, and he got punked. I mean, he lost 43-8. In 2012, again, like the defense could have held up, and maybe this is part of the whole, like, if your defense gets it done, you don't have the opportunity to throw a really bad interception in overtime, but he does. The Tracy Porter interception is a really bad moment. He played, some really bad games against the Patriots early. He's got the 41-point loss with 3 interceptions in 2002. There's some like moments where field goals cost him, but I think the overall playoff dropping, it definitely is starting to overreach. It's like, well, this is just high variance. Well, it's just a small sample size. It's starting to get into like, man, Manning really struggled to put together just some like super elite, undeniable run. He never did, not one time. And for as often as he was in, that's really concerning. And again, it's tough because I can really forgive your defense letting you down. It's really easy to forgive that. But the issue with Manning is that I feel like he had weapons almost always he had a Marvin Harrison or a Reggie Wayne or Demaryius Thomas or somebody way more often than not. So if he's losing games, fine, but it should be that he's putting up good performances and they're just not getting it done. Like Josh Allen most recently, not his most recent performance, I guess was kind of a balance, but like he's had some big time games where you're like, did what you could, brother. The defense can't let up a field goal in 13 seconds and you have to and you don't get the ball back. Like, well, it is what it is. Or like Drew Brees has some big time moments like that too.
Yeah.
Not to say that Peyton's defenses were never like really, really unworkably bad, because absolutely at times they were, but I think Brady's got him on longevity. He's got him on playoff performance. Manning, more efficient regular season quarterback, but I think I'm going to have to go Brady at 1.
Yeah. I have to agree.
Do you have Brady at 2?
Yeah, I'll put Brady at 2. And
Okay.
not be too crazy with it. Because there's a lot that's great about Tom Brady, obviously. Like, and I think, as you alluded to, even if you're just watching him pure eye test, it's not like there's nothing impressive about him whatsoever. It's not like there's a real change when you go from Tom Brady to Mac Jones, right? I think Brady he doesn't have the range that Fran Tarkington does, or Steve Young does, or Lamar Jackson does, those types of guys throughout history. But the ability to manipulate space in those close quarters that he does have access to was like so good for him. The little subtle slides, the ability to kind of stand in strong and throw over pressure because he was so tall, the accuracy to kind of hide the ball away from defenders and avoid interceptions. Like the touch is so good. I think about the Jabbar Gaffney touchdown when he came back in 2016, I think it was, against the Saints, like putting it on that top shelf on these go routes, kind of letting the receiver bend inside and making it even harder for, not only does a corner have to kind of get his head around, but he would have to then like get depth back towards the middle of the field to pick it off. And it kind of sneaks, and Edelman like sneaks around it and curves and catches it inside. Or the Randy Moss touchdown, the one-handed one against Revis. Like, you don't make a catch like that unless the placement is so dead on. And that combined with that accuracy, combined with just the little step up and the little slide and the little shift around, combined with how tall he is. Then I don't think he had a great arm like Manning or Rodgers or Mahomes. I don't think it was quite that good, or Herbert, but it was good. I mean, he could throw it 60 yards in the air. He's had those moments. Yeah. So he had a lot of little athletic tricks that made him great. And when they really needed it, he does have 1,000 rushing yards in his career.
He does.
So
he juked out Brian Urlacher one time.
He juked out Brian Urlacher. Like, he could pull it out of his bag a little bit, and he was a long strider, right? Like, he wasn't necessarily the slowest snail to ever play, although that's certainly not something that he's hanging his hat on. No. There are the brains and the smarts and that ability to just, that impenetrable wave forward, just death, whether it be death by 1,000 cuts or a big post route to Randy Moss. Like, he just is tough to stop, man. And even if it's 3rd and 5, he's willing to dump it down underneath and not take the sack. And then maybe on 4th and 3, we can do something. Like, an understanding that field position wins games, and understanding that, I want a completion, however it comes. Like, let's just stack completions and good things will happen. Like, he does have a great mindset. He does have a great mentality around the quarterback position, and did it for a long time. I mean, even the years before he got that first team All-Pro, I think in 2006, when I'm saying he wasn't all that great at the beginning, they're still 3rd in drop back EPA from 2001 or 2002, when you can start that to that first All-Pro. So he's more than just like this plucky backup that came in that developed. Like, no, he's leading top 3 passing attacks. Now, Peyton in those years is so far ahead of every other passing attack. It's unbelievable. And that's the thing that Brady is kind of lacking, are that period of years where he was Mahomes, or that period of years where he was just head and shoulders above the rest of the league. But he just was always top 3. He's always top of the league, top 1, and doing, and like there are online characters who will nitpick his postseason performance and say, like, well, his numbers aren't, GOAT level playoff numbers, or he won rings with bad Super Bowls, and those things are true. But at the end of the day, since 2002, he's 5th best in playoff EPA. Like, yeah, that's not number one, which is maybe his mythological figure would say he's number one in every single postseason thing. And he's not the most efficient postseason player ever. Baker Mayfield is actually number one in playoff passer rating, if you could believe that. But who cares? Like, he won all these games. Like, I don't really, whether he's top 5 or number 1 in EPA per play, like, damn, he was good in the playoffs. Like,
right.
Bro, Tom Brady was a good playoff performer, guys. I hate to say it, but
it was very uncommon for me watching a Patriots game in the playoffs that I'm like, Brady's gonna mess up here. Like,
right.
Like there is a certain aura where you can kind of feel that a mistake is coming, and you just never feel that with Brady.
No, it's just very, I mean, I can't imagine ever being frustrated with Tom Brady in 20 years of rooting for him. I mean, if you were love watching Tom Brady, like, yeah, you could, he always won. He won more than anybody else in NFL history, obviously. And to some extent, I can see the argument that putting anybody above him is like saying the hair just looked better on film, but the tortoise is slow. Like, he's slow. Like, he can't be the better one. I'm taking the hair on film. That's a little bit what it's like. But you gotta take into it, like, that was a one-on-one matchup in Aesop's Fable. That wasn't a team thing. So maybe the hair passed the baton off to a Brandon Bostic and he fumbled the onside kick, right? Like, that doesn't happen in the book.
So we all have the same top 2, I guess, just in a different order.
Yes.
I will say I think 3 through 5 was the toughest part of this list for me, in terms of, like, this tier of guys. And I think Manning is in the tier of guys below Brady, if I'm being honest. So I could even see an argument for, like, really, really distrusting who he was in the playoffs. At number 3, it's tough. I have Aaron Rodgers.
Wow.
Let's go.
I have Johnny Unitas.
I think that's a little bit too much. I'm not gonna lie.
So
who do you have, Theo? Why don't we?
Yes, let's just get them all out on the table here.
Mahomes. I have Patrick Mahomes.
That guy.
Interesting.
All of these guys are conversations in themselves. I don't think Mahomes is that crazy this high. It's just tough. But
it is just tough.
Let's start with Johnny Unitas.
Yeah.
Is that the craziest one here?
Yes.
So Johnny Unitas, first of all, we already talked about just the amount of success for as long as he had, right? It is pretty ridiculous for someone who was playing in 1956 to then also be playing in 1973. And he is the exception to my, like, counting stats don't really matter rule. The number of guys who were playing in the 50s or retired in the 70s that have, and even close to the yardage that Johnny Unitas had, you can count them on one hand. One of them's Frank Tarkenton, and the other is John Haddle, I think. Like, truly one of one when it comes to, I guess, setting a new standard for the quarterback position. And I do think that has to take some level of account. Obviously, like, he threw a lot of interceptions and whatnot, but it's a different time. So really, to me, it is a lot of the, like, influence for the new age of football, playing for such a long time, being as successful as he was for as long as he was, in such, like, an early stage of football. Like, this was truly unheard of. There's only one other guy who had this type of success in like a similar era, and that's Otto Graham. And spoiler alert, he's number 4 on my list, just because he didn't do it for as long. But, like, to me, being able to have this type of consistent success in an era where that doesn't happen, right? And really, that doesn't happen in most eras, right? Brady's really the only other exception that stand out, or maybe you can say those, like, Steelers teams in the 70s. But, like, you just don't see teams or players have this much consistent success in the NFL. And for Unitas and Graham to have that, I think it does stand apart. And for Unitas to do it for as long as he did puts him at number 3 on my list.
So It's a little tough to separate the old guys from the young guys, of course. Unitas, in terms of achievements, is pretty special. He is a 3-time MVP. I think he's got 7 either first or second All-Pros, at least by AP standards. When he retired, he led in passing yards at like 40K and passing touchdowns at almost 300. Obviously, like, those numbers don't hold up at all. Those are like Andy Dalton career numbers or something like that. But there's nothing that could be done about that back then. You're just not going to throw passing stats that are comparable to what we do today. And that's why I think, you know, when you go look at the list and everybody played in the 2010s or whatever, you're like, okay, maybe this is just more of an era counting stat, more of an era leaderboard than it is rather just like the individual players. For as good as Unitas was and for as influential as he was, and go back and watch the 1958 2-minute drill if you get the chance. There's a couple of cool videos about it on NFL Throwback, which has a lot of fun stuff, and it's really cool to see. You do have to remember, for a lot of Unitas' career, there just were not that many teams in the NFL. This is my big knock against these guys. It's a lot easier to rack up All-Pros and rack up MVPs when there's just not that many guys playing. And maybe that's like not their fault necessarily, but at least for the first 5 or 6 years of Unitas' career, maybe only 4, but for maybe half of the awards that I just mentioned, he's playing in like a 12-team league, you know?
Sure.
That doesn't mean that you have to take them off the list entirely, but that does mean that their accolades stack up very differently versus like a 4-time MVP Aaron Rodgers doing it in the modern era. It is just more difficult. I think we can look at accolades that way and also look at the counting stats the reverse way. For influence, I think it's important to be a historical part of the game, but honestly, I only care about how good you were, right? So like Curry is very influential because nobody can play like LeBron, right? And it's tougher to be like, well, I'm just going to go be Bron. It's a little bit easier to say like everybody can shoot, right? Not like Curry, not trying to hate. But does Curry's influence move him up to like number 1 on your list? It doesn't really change where I would put him in
Curry's
terms of the
influence
NBA.
does, I feel like, bump him up on a lot of all-time lists.
I think Curry is very high on all-time list within himself, but I think like a less influential but better player, let me put it that way, because I'm really not trying to dog on him. A less influential but better player would just rank higher for me. Like, I'm just not going to be like, well, Unitas did this. I'll give him credit for breaking ground. I'll give him credit for how good he was in the 3 championships, but I think that this is just way too high. He was not as consistently good as a lot of these. He wasn't as consistently good as Otto Graham was, who has just as many first-team. He has more first-team All-Pros.
Otto Graham, to me, is the most consistently good, maybe the most consistently good football player ever.
And for the record, you know, this is back when Pro Bowls mattered a little bit more, but we can also just go by, you know, AP votes or those teams or whatever. From 57 to 67, he was really good. But from 68 to 73, he was like sticking around, but not receiving any sort of award recognition or leading in any sort of stat. In 70, I mean, like they go and win the Super Bowl and all that. So, or you know, they're very competitive. I mean, but like, I don't think that I'm giving Unitas a lot of credit for sticking around. The fact that he played in 73, longevity isn't about number of years played. It's about being good for a long time. Vince Carter stuck around for a long time, but that doesn't really change his legacy in any significant way. And if you knew that a guy, it's like if you knew that a guy was going to stick around for 4 extra years as kind of like an end of bench guy or like a backup quarterback, would that change where you draft them? No, it wouldn't, and it doesn't change their legacy.
It could give you the opportunity to have him as a bridge quarterback. He could be a teacher for the younger generation.
I think it would. I think it wouldn't apply at all when we know things like how, you know, how many MVPs these guys win and what type of playoff performers they are. I just think it ranks a lot lower. So I have Unitas on my list.
Yeah,
I have him at number 9.
Okay, I could put Graham above Unitas. That might be something that I entertain more closely because I mean Graham having 7 first-team All-Pros and. You talk about a guy like leading the league in every statistic for so many years. He's that guy, 5-time Pro Bowls, the Browns were NFL or conference champs for basically every year that he was there, right? He's I think the most consistently successful football player maybe to ever grace the gridiron. But
there were a lot of guys who were getting, the All-Pro votes.
Mm-hmm.
Sammy Baugh, Sid Luckman, Johnny Unitas. None of them were as consistently in that mix as Otto Graham.
I'll say this about, I might disagree with you on your MVP take and the amount of teams in the league, Matt, just because, like, let's say there's 12 teams in the league. I assume those are still the 12 best quarterbacks in the world who are quarterbacking those 12 teams. Like, there might be 32 teams now, but quarterbacks outside the top 12 are not really competing for first team all pros and MVPs. I mean, if it was just the Chiefs, Bills, Ravens, Patriots, and Rams in the league, like, it would still be a war for that first team all pro quarterback spot, because you got to be the best of the best. And that upper crust is kind of probably always going to be like 5 or 6 guys over the course of NFL history. So whether there's a large lower class or kind of a small lower class, to win MVP amongst like your top tier peers has always kind of been the same. It's not quite, we spin the wheel and it's 1 out of 32 versus 1 of 12. Mm-hmm. I will say for rings though, that's
other
kind of, it's kind of the same thing.
It's kind of the same, but yet you see not only in the NFL, but you see in like the Celtics. I'll bring up basketball again. They win over and over and over. It's the same teams in it. I think you're kind of right. Like if you shrunk the NFL down today, yes, it would still be really hard. You'd still have to be really great to win MVP. But the smaller league was smaller because it wasn't as popular. There was less competition. So the talent level was also lower. And that's why you see these guys, win a bunch of championships or a bunch of MVPs in a row.
Right.
And I do think on some level, if there's less people who are like kind of in the mix or less offenses, like there's less chance for maybe you to be on a super untalented team or, for somebody else to have like a crazy season, especially in a short year and kind of beat you out. So I think you see a lot of guys rack them up a ton. I do think there's an advantage there, but I see what you're saying.
Yeah, I'm going to move Otto Graham up to 3. I'm putting Unitas at 4.
I think that's still really high over the modern guys. I'll be honest with you. Again, this is like a weight thing. I would have Otto Graham like at 7-ish. I'm going to leave him off my list and I'll keep Unitas on for the sake of this, but I would have him around there. I think he's a fair shout. Paul Brown said he's the best player he ever coached. Otto Graham at Northwestern beat him while Paul Brown was coaching at Ohio State. And then Paul Brown goes to the NFL and the first player he signs is Otto Graham.
I did not know that.
Yeah. So he's apparently a really good playmaker. Paul Brown has a ton of good stuff to say about him. You should go listen to it on YouTube. But if you can find it on the Throwback channel. But I think Graham is a fine addition. I really, really do. I don't think this is Brown's bias. I think 3 is a little high, but again,
like there could be some Browns bias. We don't have to lie about that.
Otto Graham at 3 is Browns bias.
Okay. Otto Graham on the top 10. I can really defend that because I feel like if you're mad at that, then basically you have to say like no old players, no black and white footage at all, which like, if that's how you want to do the list, fair, but that's what you'd be saying.
Yeah.
Because outside of that, Otto Graham did just about everything that you can do. But I have Theo, you have Mahomes at 3.
Mahomes. Yeah, I do have Mahomes.
I don't think that's crazy.
I don't either. I'll be honest. Like, I really went into it with the mindset of like, let's make sure this isn't recency bias. Let's make sure it's just not who he is right now. And no, like what he's doing currently, what he's done over the last like 5-7 years is unbelievable. It matches up with anybody when you take into account like just the situation and the team success and the personal player success, the eye test, the numbers, all of it says Mahomes is the man. The only issue for me, of course, is that I value longevity so much. It really, really is not like a formula that helps out players who are currently going. And I thought about just putting him high and saying we're going to give him benefit of the doubt and like kind of project the end of his career. But I can't do it. I think it's too risky. There's too many guys who are great and then fell off quicker than you expect.
Yeah.
And, when I look at Brady, he built his whole case not his whole case, but he built so much of his case after like the age 30, ACL tear. I just don't know if I want to say like Mahomes, I'm going to move up and assume like something rare like that is going to happen. I think it's fair though. His peak and what he's done so far, it's really not that far off. And I'll let you.
He's on GOAT pace.
I mean, I'm sure you guys everybody can wax poetic about Patrick Mahomes and how good he's been. Like he's got a lot of gold on his Pro Football Reference page, all-time leader in success rate, all-time leader in yards per game, all-time leader in adjusted net yards per attempt. And I know he's the all-time leader, not only in regular season EPA per play, but playoff EPA per play as well, since that started being tracked in 2002. And he's the all-time leader in playoff EPA per play by kind of a lot. It's him. And then there's definitely a tier below him. He's the peak of the mountain there. And that's what really sets him apart, is it just feels so inevitable with him, like every single year. Even the last time they won a ring back when they beat the Eagles, right? Like they did not feel like the best team in the AFC coming out of that playoff. But
that's one of the crazy ones. And them getting a ring that year is just Mahomes was like that. And it wasn't that much more complicated. And those rings are really a lot more rare than is let on.
A lot more rare. And what blows my mind about that is like, it's not the scrambling acrobatics that he's winning with in that playoff run. It's insane anticipation. Like, I don't know if I've ever seen the ball get out faster than that. And with the same kind of, and even when they won the AFC the next year and got killed by the Eagles, right?
Yeah.
That wasn't supposed to happen either. And it's Tom Brady-esque pocket passing, like hit the top of your drop, throw it. Kelsey turns around, the ball's stuck in his face mask. Like it's so good from within the pocket, in rhythm, traditional pocket passing, while also he's the greatest acrobat that the league has ever seen. His ability to get his hips through from any angle, throw off his back foot and generate velocity and put it on somebody's face mask. He's just a planet. He's just a planet. He's so good at both things. The game, you watch like Brett Favre when you go do this, and he's known as Sandlot ball, right? Like it's all like Mahomes is that at its peak, and also everything else at its peak. He's just, I think, the best quarterback he's the GOAT in certain ways. You know what I mean? Like from what he's done from his debut starter season when he won MVP to now, like I'm taking that over anybody's 20s, we'll say. Would I rather have Brady for another entire decade? Like, yeah, probably. But would I rather is Mahomes in the last 10 years, I think, better than any 10-year block of Brady's career? Like, yeah, I kind of do think that that's true. He just wins. He's Michael Jordan. He's the GOAT in certain ways. So I put him at 3. Yeah. I put him at 3. And when you have Rodgers at 3, Matt, like all the things you love about Rodgers, like I feel like exist in Mahomes, but he's got 3
for
Super
very
Bowl
similar
rings.
ways.
Yeah.
Well, and we'll talk about that with Rodgers and the playoff performance and the overall success. I'll just say with Mahomes, again, I feel like Brady is so great and reached that peak because he always could stress every part of the defense. And if you gave him something, he could take it. And ultimately, when you have somebody who does that at the highest level, even if they don't have like a crazy arm, and even if they don't, have like great mobility, you still put so much pressure on the other team and you can generate great results, right? I think Mahomes does a lot of the same stuff, but then he adds in that mobility and that playmaking. I feel like I've said it 1,000 times this offseason, but like his ability to run and make himself a threat that you have to account for when things break down, but still be able to take the right answer down the field is unbelievable, man. So I just think, yeah, he does so much well. I can't argue that his peak isn't up there with basically anybody's. Obviously, like the stats themselves and the overall accolades have been a little bit lower recently just because the offensive infrastructure has completely decayed around him to the highest degree, essentially. But even then, the results have been really good. And, I was going back and looking at it. I was kind of embarrassed by this, but I had it in my head that the Chiefs' defense was so much better than it really has been over the course of his career there. I mean, not counting this last year, but in just the 2020s, last year excluded. Take that as is. But the first 5 years of the 2020s, they ranked 15th, 6th, 15th, 23rd, and 19th in EPA per play defensively. They've been completely mid to the highest degree, essentially, outside of 1 year, which they did win a Super Bowl. And obviously, like, Mahomes isn't going to win without that defense. But there have been seasons where I think almost any other quarterback in NFL history would be sunk by the receivers that they had. And Mahomes isn't sunk. Even when it's not efficient in terms of like points or EPA, the success rate and keeping them on pace makes them so frustrating. The late game heroics have been great. He has a higher passer rating in the playoffs than he does in the regular season, for what it's worth. And that passer rating of 105 would be like the career all-time record for the regular season as well. So, I mean, I just think he's unbelievable in every way. It's just tough because he's in the middle of playing. Don't take it as like a shot at him that I have him at 5.
I also have him at 5.
But I could see him as high as 3, certainly, or if you want to make the case for 2, man, it's really tough because like Manning was winning like psycho MVPs late into his career, and it feels like you can't just give that to Patrick no matter how much you like him. But in terms of playoff performance, dude, not even close. Yeah. And you would really, if you were really sitting there on the draft board and you just said you can have Mahomes now, but you didn't know what he was going to do past 30, would you still take him at 2? I think there's a real chance you might just say, screw it. Yeah, I think you might.
I mean, you're basically, you take Mahomes 1 and you give yourself, 6 Super Bowls, 2 different dynasties across 2 different decades. And then you take Mahomes after that to basically get the first half of that and hope that you get the second half also.
I don't think you can have him outside of your top 5. I think no. I think once you get down, if you have him at 5 and you look at the guys below him, it's like, are we really serious here? Like, are we really taking whoever over Patrick Mahomes in that case? Like, yeah, Manning and Brady and Rodgers and maybe some other guys, but like I'm taking Patrick Mahomes over Joe Montana, like so easily. It's not even funny.
Dude, it's not close.
Sorry, boomers. Sorry, unks. I don't care that he saw John Candy in the stands. I don't care. I don't care that he called his wife on the sideline and he was the coolest, most calm, collected customer to ever do it. I'm taking Mahomes.
I'm the biggest Joe Montana hater ever. I really am.
Well, anyway. we'll get into that. I mean, I got Rodgers here at 3.
I want to know about Rodgers, then I also want to know who you have at 4.
I have Montana at 4.
Okay.
So I have it Brady, Manning, Rodgers, Montana, Mahomes, but I feel strong about Brady, and then I think this is like that. Those 4 are the tier 2, is what I would say. And it's really tough again with Mahomes' career not being finished. As far as Rodgers goes, obviously, like the high end play, the peak is up there with absolutely anybody's. You could make a real case that it's number 1. I think a lot of people would agree with that. Just in terms of his ability to both be like this creative playmaker where he shows off, I mean, one of, if not the best arms in the history of the NFL, while also, leading the NFL in interception percentage the good way, as in low, 6 times over the course of his career? I mean, he was the king of putting up like 45 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, 40 touchdowns, 8 interceptions. These really, and these were interception numbers that are also a little bit of ahead of their time for the era. Guys are throwing less and less and less and less. They were a little bit more common in the 2010s than they are even now. So I want to give him credit for that. He led a lot of really great offenses. There was kind of a lull when the infrastructure was weakened, but ultimately 4 MVPs and 4 really strong seasons overall make him somebody who I just think is really well balanced, has really good longevity in terms of being, a good player in 2009 to a really good player in 2021, right? His last MVP season is a solid stretch, and I think compares with most guys on this list, I would say. And as far as the playoffs go, I don't think that Rodgers is a negative playoff player, kind of at all, to be real with you. I'm going to exclude like the Pittsburgh stuff because, again, if I was drafting him, I would just be like, whatever. at this point. It wouldn't really change my evaluation. And you can tell me if excluding the washed years it's wrong. But I mean, over the course of his time in Green Bay, a passer rating of 101 in the playoffs, an interception percentage of 1.7, like touchdown percentage of almost 6, like the efficiency numbers, the yard per play numbers are all really, really strong. And overall, like there aren't a ton of Rodgers stinkers that stand out to me. They're there, but when I think about the Packers blowing it, I think about consistently playing with subpar defenses. He only had a significantly strong defense or decent defenses a handful of times in his career. I think they were top 10 in EPA per play defensively 3 times over that 13-year stretch. One of those times being the Super Bowl year, one of those times I think being the year before, and one of those times the year before in which they lost like a 40-50 shootout to the Cardinals, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. And then the other one being in 2014, which if you go watch that game, we've talked about it at depth this offseason as well. No way that's on Rodgers. And Rodgers actually finishes that game beautifully strong. Rodgers is a guy where I felt like so much more often than not, he was the type of guy where it's like you left him too much time. There's 30 seconds. That's too much for Rodgers. He's going to pull something off. It's too much. So I think the longevity is good. I think the peak is as good as anybody's. And really, like, I think his playoff performance is pretty good overall. I think it's really good, to be honest with you.
Oh, I mean, his playoff EPA is second behind Mahomes.
Yeah, I think he's a phenomenal postseason player.
Yeah.
But not to say that he's perfect, but when I'm comparing him to Joe Montana, which is the other guy in this tier, that's the big question, because Montana also had a really good stretch, not quite as long as Rodgers, and maybe not a peak that was quite as high as Rodgers, but, you know, a multiple-time MVP winner who was really, really good in the Super Bowl, right? And he had 11 touchdowns and no interceptions and threw for almost 300 yards a game and had a passer rating in those 4 games of like 127 or something that, like, you know, you couldn't possibly keep up for a long stretch. He was just that good. He was also super calm and super clutch overall. But I also think that it's a little bit of a team sport when it comes to actually getting in the Super Bowl and being able to have those performances time in and time out. Like, not everybody gets 4 chances, and he was consistently playing with better defenses and was consistently playing with a lot of help. I don't think it's fair to completely discredit him entirely because, you know, of Walsh and Jerry Rice, because he won after Walsh and he won before Rice. Not to say that, you know, you can't just have different guys who are obviously still all like coming together to create a really long-term, really great environment, because certainly he had that. But I do think that the supporting cast is among the greatest that any quarterback has ever had, to be quite honest with you. And I do think that
point blank.
Yeah, I mean, it would be tough to like compare, especially to people who played a longer time. But on top of that, Montana also had playoff games in which he would play poorly. But since it wasn't the Super Bowl, it doesn't, you know, become a part of that stat. It's not that the playoff performance doesn't matter. It's not that the Super Bowl performance doesn't matter. It's not that I really want to ding him for having some bad games and maybe going out in the 80s and you know, he had a 3-year stretch, 3 playoff games, doesn't throw a touchdown, right? So I think that's just tough for me when the whole argument, not the whole argument, but the crux of the argument comparing him to other all-time top 5 quarterbacks is that, no, he was like the playoff master. I think he was great in the Super Bowl. I'll give him credit. I'll put him at 4, but I don't have him like all the way up at 2, I guess would be my case.
Why do you have him at 4 though?
Yeah,
I mean, this is a guy who won a Super Bowl and was, you know, in a lot of MVP races before Rice and after, or not after Rice, before Rice and after Walsh. I think that, I mean, he was somebody who did a great job operating that offense. So I don't see why I wouldn't put him pretty highly when the accolades, when the winning, when the overall performance just ranks so highly.
I have Steve Young over Joe Montana.
I think that's tough.
I also have Steve Young over Joe Montana.
Let's go, dude. Every time that I read about Walsh and about Joe Montana, about Steve Young was like, Walsh loved Steve Young. That was like his golden boy. He saw Steve Young like withering away in a bad situation. It was like, this guy's not being used right. This is one of the like craziest athletes I've ever seen at the quarterback position. This is a guy that has to be given a fair shot. And that's what he did. And when Walsh took over, like the offense was arguably better with him than it was with Montana. And like he has one of the greatest Super Bowl performances of all time, throwing 6 touchdowns. I ding Montana, not necessarily that he was like in these great situations, but that the situation was the offensive system. The situation was the West Coast offense, which was specifically designed for quarterbacks like Montana, right? Where it's like, we're just going to get the timing right, and we're going to have this like ultra say, like it was designed for quarterbacks it was designed for a backup quarterback is really what it was designed for. And I do ding Montana for that. Like he gets the credit for being successful in it, right? And doing the thing and being a successful quarterback. He gets credit for that and operating that system at a high level, right? Him and Jerry Rice used to throw and run routes on air in the dark, in pitch black, right? To really work on that. You get credit for being that committed to the grind. But I value the fact that like Steve Young was just like, he didn't need that system to be that successful. Dan Marino didn't need that type of a system to be successful. And well, I guess they didn't win any Super Bowls with Marino, so maybe you can hold that against him if you want. Aaron Rodgers, like to me, those are just more special players at the quarterback position than Montana was.
Yeah, I think with Young, I mean, it is crazy that Walsh wanted to trade for him when they had Montana and kind of kept him on the back burner as a former number 1 overall pick, right? And eventually, like after one injured season, like Steve Young comes in and like wins that job and took that offense to heights that Montana hadn't reached before. Not that they weren't good with Montana. I mean, Montana was regarded best in the world, right? Like, there's no doubt about it. He's ahead of Young on most people's lists. But the fact is, when Young took over, like not only the passing yards per attempt, you know, leading the league, higher in Young's prime than Montana's prime, but he's also giving you that rushing juice, and he's kind of, you know, a Rodgers before Rodgers or a Lamar before Lamar. When people would say like, this guy could be a running back. Like he's so athletic and gifted. I don't know about that. Like watching it back, like he's a good scrambler and all. He was not like, it's not like Lamar Jackson out there.
No,
but like Rodgers couldn't be a running back either, but he had great playmaking. He had the best playmaking in the league in his prime. That's what Steve Young had. And from like 81, which is Montana's first season as a starter, to 90 versus Steve Young 92 to 98. Like the passer ratings aren't even close. Yards per attempt is half a yard in favor of Young. Steve Young had a better regular season record, not the same kind of playoff success though. He didn't have 3 rings, he had 1.
No.
So you can hold that against him, but way better avoiding interceptions. Like I just think I think that Young had a little bit more juice. I just think he had a little bit more juice.
I can see it. I would say that ultimately what dings Steve Young for me is that he didn't get started until his 30s, and ultimately like his peak is pretty short-lived, right? And on top of that, like I think you guys are like giving Young just complete and entire grace for the situation and like giving Montana none. I see the case though. I mean, it's tough with Montana because it's such a good spot to be in and it's so hard to separate. But between the fact that I think Montana did a little bit longer and was more successful overall in the playoffs, even with, you know, some of the issues he had, and was overall as successful as anybody in the Super Bowl, I gave the nod to him and I said, you know, that brings him to being one of my like tier 2 guys.
What about longevity? What about longevity though? Because Montana only started 164 games. Like that's not a ton of games.
He had a decade of prime play. The thing is that games started does not move me crazy. Montana, I could see definitely moving down my list, though. I'll hear the case for it, because there's a couple of other guys who did it for a really long time that we could discuss. Specifically, like, I mean, if we want to get into it, have we all given our top fives?
Yeah,
No,
I had
I've only
Brady
given to 3.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So who's your 4 and 5?
I've got Marino at 4, and I've got Rodgers at 5.
I think that's too high for Marino. I
love Marino, but I have to agree. I have Marino at 8.
Ooh.
So give me your case for Marino, but I'll tell you. No, just give me your case for Marino, and we'll come.
I mean, the case for Marino. Look, I get it, because like it's your guy. You rank them high.
Yeah.
No, go ahead.
He's got an incredible arm. I mean, he was undeniably way ahead of his time. The 1984 season is totally crazy, throwing 5,000 yards back then. Again, with the yard, I stand by that, but still, like 48 touchdowns, those are records that stood for a long time, right? He takes him to the Super Bowl. This is only his second season, which I guess, like, take that how you want, but like, dang, man, he was electric. In his first 4 years, 3 straight first-team All-Pros after the rookie season. Really incredible. Super, super high-level sack avoidance was also one of those traits that you give Marino a lot of credit for. I'll be honest, I'm not sure about the strength of the offensive line for some of those Dolphins teams. That's something I'd have to go back and look. But the sack percentage, to start his career, he led in sack percentage like 7 times in a row. And when you go look on film, like if you can go watch some tape of him, you see how there's years where he's taking single-digit sacks.
Yeah.
The issue that I have with Marino is he really did not stay at that peak for very long into his career. And then he was not very good in the playoffs. And both those things move him down my list.
Yeah. Same thing for me.
So I think with Marino, I think he was in a pretty bad situation. Like, just, you could say Montana played with Jerry Rice and Roger Craig and Bill Walsh. Like, name one player that Dan Marino ever played with.
Was Warfield still there? Probably not, right? Warfield was probably gone.
They were like pretty good, man. They were. I don't know if they were Hall of Famers.
Sure, but it's not like Travis Kelce. It's not like Tyreek Hill. It's not like Rob Gronkowski. It's not like Jerry Rice. Like, it's just not like that, I'll say. And I think it had to have gotten worse over time. Sometimes I raise an eyebrow when I look at Dan Marino, like, falling off or not being quite at the level he was at in his first few years, because that's definitely true. I mean, as a rookie, he was 3rd in MVP voting. Then he won MVP. Then he was first-team All-Pro, and then he was first-team All-Pro again. That's how he starts his career. He never becomes first-team All-Pro after his first 4 seasons. But I look at, like, Mahomes now, and I have Mahomes as the best quarterback in the league. The ACL obviously complicates things, but the way he was playing before was elite. But he wasn't contending for MVPs. He wasn't putting huge stats on the board. He just, they started scooping out and hollowing out the infrastructure, and with Rodgers too. I mean, they started scooping out and hollowing out the infrastructure, and all of a sudden that line wasn't as good. And Jordy Nelson goes away, and man, like, or 2 years after Lamar Jackson won his MVP, like, his numbers are way down. Sometimes I don't always trust that accolades and even statistics are an accurate reflection on how good you are or if you've fallen off, especially with these top tier quarterbacks. I think Marino probably stayed at a high level, and the fact that they never put a real team around him is why, like, you see some of these playoff fall offs and why you get these accolade fall offs. And even with Manning, like, when someone hits the playoffs and, like, completely implodes, in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, like, the quarterback was carrying the team, and it just got exposed. And eventually you hit these points, like Drake May in the Super Bowl, or Patrick Mahomes in the Bucs' Super Bowl with the offensive line, or Cam Newton in the Panthers Super Bowl. Like, his stats weren't great then. Obviously he was carrying them, but eventually you just hit this point where it's like, you look at the stats and it's like, wow, this quarterback had a terrible game. This was he's a playoff faller, but it's like asking the dinosaurs to survive the asteroid strike. Like, you just don't have the facilities when the world is falling apart around you. And I think a lot of these quarterbacks have that excuse of, like, is Peyton Manning really the biggest playoff faller of all time, or was it kind of an underrated carry job? Those are those are the things that play in my mind, and it plays in my mind with Marino. He got off to such a blistering pace to begin his career. I think it's like him and Unitas probably of like completely off, and Manning too, like completely off the charts, off the map, never before seen production from the quarterback position. Like we have entered a new epoch of the quarterback position when you've got guys ripping off past, like, I don't know if we'll ever see it again. I think we may have, because Mahomes even hasn't like been that head and shoulders above his competition like Marino and Manning and Unitas were at the very beginning. And then it comes down to, I think, building a situation where you're able to sustain that. I think Marino didn't really get that situation. I think his ability to he's bigger than I thought he was. Like his release and the velocity that comes with such a short amount of time is crazy. He's doing it all from like under center straight drop back. So it's no shotgun for him. It's none of these, like, it's no Megatron. It's just like, I'm dropping 5 steps back from under center and throwing it to Mark Clayton as quickly as possible. And Mark Clayton is like a smaller guy. What was he? He's 5'9", 170 pounds, like couple Pro Bowls, never a first team All Pro. Like that's his dude that he's got to work with for his entire career. And that's as good as it gets. That's as good as it gets, but he's still leading the league in touchdowns. He's still the accuracy, the sack avoidance, the arm, he wasn't a crazy scrambler, but he had, like, obviously he wasn't taking sacks, and he's still getting towards the sideline and making crazy plays there. Marino is, I think, super goated. I think Marino's is higher than 8. I think the fall off for him is probably a little bit overrated.
But here's my issue. You have to, like, you can't say like maybe. Was it an overrated fall off? Because I've listened to people talk about him and they say, the arm didn't last as long as you would have hoped, and physically he declined a little bit earlier, right? And of course, like, it's a little bit hard in retrospect to look back at these guys and understand the context of everything around them as well as we can for like Rodgers or Mahomes or Brady or Manning or like one of the guys that we've seen so recently versus dudes we weren't alive for. I'll give grace for that. And I totally am with you. Like, statistically, it's not always telling. And it's kind of like we're really zoomed out trying to figure out everything that happened. So I'm open to the idea. Marino's peak was great. His top traits were really, really clear. What he was good at was awesome. But at the same time, like, he was unsuccessful in the playoffs. And I don't know if I can go as far to say, like, well, definitely, like, it's all, he would have been great had it just been for his supporting cast. And we don't even need to know what else was going on there. We don't even need to ask, like, hey, could you have done it? We can just assume because the situation was bad, right? Because then I think otherwise you can go into this and say, well, what you would want to have is a great supporting cast early and then nothing later, and then we'll just revise and give you all the credit for everything for the rest of your career. You know what I'm saying?
I feel you. I'm giving a quick scan. There's a Reddit thread that accumulated his DVOA ranks, and after 1990 it's still 5th, 6th, 4th, 11th, 1st, 4th, 13th, 23rd.
But some of those Dolphins defenses in the 90s were actually pretty good too. Like, they have
that don't help his stats too much.
Yeah, but it I think it should help when it comes to team success and playoff success, and they still don't win anything with, like, I get that, like, the receiving supporting cast, like, really got bleak. I mean,
I don't even know if I do. It really seems like you're being incredibly harsh to the receivers, even the good ones that he had.
I think that he had good receivers, but he just didn't play with. I mean, to be a dynasty and to win Super Bowls, I mean, you need something that's really, really elite besides you. Like, you got to, and I don't think he ever had anything really elite beside him. That's all. Like, Jerry Rice is the GOAT of football. He's the GOAT of football. That's who Dan Marino gets to throw to. Like, imagine it's like having, LeBron. Sometimes his teammates are I don't know, Andre Ilgauskas or whoever. Like, you're not winning with that. You add Anthony Davis to the equation, like, things start to get very, very different. And if instead of Anthony Davis, it was Michael Jordan as your teammate, then yeah, things would start to get really different. for I don't know what tier of teammate like or Robin to Marino's Batman like it.
I'm not disagreeing that help. I'm not disagreeing about that. I'm saying that you're overstating how bad his receiving core was when he was good, just because they weren't like first team All Pro.
Maybe he could have gotten a ring like Mahomes did but even then it's Travis Kelce, and even then it's I guess I don't know. I should have looked at it more with these.
See, but this is what I'm saying is like
Creed Humphrey,
Travis Kelce,
Chris Jones, like these are Hall of Famers.
Sure, but the Hall of Fame stuff I think is a little bit overstated in the sense that like, you know, Travis Kelce's going to go to the Hall of Fame in part because he was so great leading up to like, I don't know, 2023 or whatever. How good was he actually in 2023 versus how good were, you know, the players that Marino had in their prime, like when they were winning those MVPs, right? Because that was kind of the last stand for Kelce really even being sort of the number one tight end in the NFL. And I don't know. I just think that's a little too harsh on the weapons early on. But I see your point.
I don't know. I think even Rodgers, I don't think he was surrounded with terrible weapons at all. Like I loved Jordy. Like I loved Randall Cobb. But
I think Rodgers is a good point though, because is Jordy Nelson's not going to the Hall of Fame.
Well, this is a great point. Jordy's an excellent one-time second team All-Pro. If you saw that on Mark Clayton's, you know, Pro Football Reference, it's like discrediting. We know how good Jordy Nelson was, though.
Right.
He was good, but he wasn't great. Like he wasn't like nearly as good as like Demaryius Thomas. Like in his prime, Jordy and Demaryius Thomas are two different threat levels. Jordy and Rob Gronkowski are two like very different threat levels, like a boss you face in the beginning of the game versus like the very end. Like that is nobody is
disagreeing with that. What we're not looking for like who had the best weapons, because nobody's sitting here and arguing Mark Clayton's better than Rob Gronkowski or Randy Moss or some shit. What we're arguing is that these, like having multiple Pro Bowl 1,000-yard receivers on your team, that is decent help. That is not like, that's the type of help that is far from disqualifying from having a great season.
It's decent help, but you guys have Marino ranked below guys who had Hall of Fame help. When Marino, like, versus Montana, I mean, Montana, I don't think he ended his career as like the all-time touchdowns leader, the all-time yards leader, any of that. And, you know, Marino did with a better peak and without Hall of Fame teammates around him. So then you're giving Montana the credit because he's got four rings and amazing Super Bowl performances, but it's like,
first of all, I have Montana at 9. You
cannot unlock those type of Super Bowl performances without Hall of Fame teammates or coaches around you. And I guess
that's bullshit. That's not true.
Who is
you can have great Super Bowl performances without a Hall of Fame weapon.
I guess like Nick Foles, you could say. Yeah,
I mean, like, I think there's plenty of times where Brady has gone in with even like post-peak Rob Gronkowski. No.
But even then, I could look at Kelce and I could look at Lane Johnson and I could say like, it's a pretty great offensive line.
I think that the Hall of Fame tag is kind of dubious because it allows you to say like this player was great, but we don't have to analyze how good they were in the year that we're talking about. So like Travis Kelce is a Hall of Famer for his now entire career, but is he Hall of Fame help for his entire career? Well,
I have Mahomes at number 3.
Well, this is what I'm saying is that the Hall of Fame tag is intentionally kind of misleading here because it also discounts anybody who is not having like an incredible long sustainable prime when in a lot of the years we're talking, we just need like 1 or 2 years for some of these seasons. So you can just discount all help. It also is like way too high of a bar. I agree that having those type of dudes is awesome or whatever, but like the Chiefs defense, like I said, has not been that great over the course of Kansas City. They've had some really good moments, and they were key in one of his runs, absolutely. And they've been key on some level in every way.
Jones has been key, that's for sure, like big moments and things like that.
But like if the Chiefs got similar results off of like a group of pass rushers, none of which were going to make it to the Hall of Fame, would that really change anything? I think the answer is no. I feel like you have a good argument for Marino, but I just disagree that, like, I think you're being a little too harsh with the supporting cast. And I think with Marino, I'll hear out the argument that maybe he was good for a long time, longer than I anticipated, and you should move him up for that. But Montana not having like a very long post-prime career and therefore like not ending crazy high in terms of passing yards or passing touchdowns, that doesn't weight as heavily to me, I have to say.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
So you have Marino at 4. You have Rodgers.
I'll have Rodgers at 5. Yeah.
Okay.
Which we already went over. I mean, yes. Rodgers.
I have Rodgers at 6, right after Mahomes, and then Steve Young, who we've already talked about, is 7. Marino is my 8. Montana is my 9.
And who's your 10?
Them off.
Drew Brees.
Yeah, just. Well, okay. So you have. Well, I'll go to my 6 now. Who do you have at 6?
Me. Let me get Johnny Unitas there. We already spoke of him a little bit. I guess the stat that kind of blows my mind, and I'm maybe my list is all beginning of their career merchants.
I think you discount longevity a little bit.
But for Unitas, the number that stands out to me is just touchdown to interception ratio, because we don't have better stats from those days. But he had 70. There was a 3-year stretch, I think his sophomore year through his 4th year, where he had a 75 to 38 touchdown interception ratio. And all the other greats from that time period are like hanging dead even. Like, it's really good to be at 50 and 50. It's really good to be at 55 and 55. Like, a 3-year stretch with that kind of ratio to me today would be like 100 to 0. Like, it would be something crazy like that. Yeah. And to avoid picks while keeping all the big plays intact, I think he may have been the first one to ever do it at that level for any kind of sustained period of time. Just such a modern pocket passer, like such a great little manipulator. Kind of like Brady. Like, you watch his old tape and I'm like, this looks like Tom Brady or whoever you want to say from today, the great pocket passers, a Dak Prescott or whoever you want to say. Like, little slides, little manipulations, aggressive while avoiding interceptions, and played a little bit of, I think, halfback at Louisville. I mean, he's the rags to riches story. He was drafted high, he was cut by the Steelers, all these things. I think I heard Belichick state once that he played a little bit of halfback at Louisville. I don't know if I could Google that, but he was somebody that like could scramble just a little bit, has kind of that sneaky athleticism, and won titles and kind of redefined quarterback play. So I agree with he got banged up and wasn't able to sustain that 75 to 38 ratio. He started throwing picks just like everybody else and probably hung near even the rest of his career after those great years at the beginning. But I got him at 6.
Yeah, I think I'm going to call kind of an audible on the back half of my list here as we've talked about some of these different guys, but I feel strongly about 6. Maybe the quarterback that I felt the strongest about compared to what I thought about them beforehand, like going into this list versus how I feel now, I got Drew Brees at 6. He really was that good for that long. Yeah. He led a top 10 passing offense by EPA from 2004 to 2019 every single year. He was unbelievably consistent, and really he was very good in the playoffs. After that Super Bowl run, man, he caught a lot of brutal breaks, dude. In terms of like, okay, because the next year is Beast Quake, which is a game they lose and the defense gives up 40 points. Yeah. The year after is the loss to San Francisco with Vernon Davis, where Brees plays great and gets them the lead multiple times, and they just can't hang on to it. And then they go on a stretch of, I think, 4 years where 3 times they have a bottom 5 offense. So when you remember those seasons of like the Saints completely letting down Breeze, it really was as bad as you remember. Then you have the Minneapolis Miracle. Then you have the no call in the NFC Championship game. I mean, it's not like all perfect. And of course, like I say constantly, Breeze still had a chance to win it in OT and threw an interception, just like everybody else. He has his moments. But with Breeze, I think the high end play was pretty apparent. He lost some MVPs that maybe he could have won. So maybe it feels like the peak was never quite that level. But for counting stats, like, man, nobody's going to do you better than him. 5 years of 5,000 yards. I think that's partially, a pass attempt thing at time. But you know what? Being high pass attempt is not all bad. It's not all just like phony or anything, because if you have to take over a big volume of the workload on offense, that really means something. And that's a big, part of going way back. Like Otto Graham threw so many more passes than guys like a Bart Starr or a Sammy Baugh or well, one of Baugh or Luckman threw a lot. I'm getting them mixed up. Regardless, I give him credit for that.
I watched a Peyton versus Favre game, or a condensed version, and it started. Because it was condensed, I didn't see how far it went, but I think it started 20 passes in a row to 0 runs, and the Colts were up 21-0, and it's like that does. Where they had 21 points on the board. They scored 3 touchdowns in those 20 passes. So they're like, well, let's just keep throwing. Like, that does say something. For Breeze, it has something to do with, like, Sean Payton loves to throw a screen to Reggie Bush or
Darren Sproles.
Darren Sproles, or not Pierre Garçon. Who is their little Pierre? Pierre Thomas.
Pierre Thomas.
Yes.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of that as an extension of the game for Breeze. But
for sure.
Like, that's still.
But in terms of consistency, and when Breeze was bad, and it got bad to the point where like he couldn't throw the ball down the field anymore towards the end, it wasn't even like that bad. He wasn't like Peyton level, for whatever that's worth, which I guess really doesn't change my evaluation of where he ranks. So when I look at Breeze, I see somebody who, shout out. I am still mad about how Michael Thomas got talked about because of Breeze's limitations. But look, I'm not saying Breeze didn't necessarily have like a good supporting cast, because for a lot of his career he did. But when I look at what he achieved while he was in the league, I see somebody who was a really effective player for 15 seasons, which is pushing up there with like just about everybody other than Brady, and who was also really good in the playoffs and probably could have won more rings had he been in a more consistent situation and not had so many brutal postseason breaks. I don't think there's many guys that I can really say that about, to be honest with you. So give me past my top 5, and I think I'm going to go Drew Brees.
I respect putting Drew Brees at 6, dude. I love Drew Brees so much. He's just truly, I think, is the football player that got me interested in football was Drew Brees.
You forget how popular he was.
Yes.
When he, like, in 2000, after they won that Super Bowl, it was crazy. I went back and looked at all that stuff. I'm like, man, that's right. It was Breeze, and he was on the cover of everything. I mean, there's a cover on Madden every year, but it really felt like he was particularly big time.
A Packer quarterback never got it. Actually, no, Favre did once. Rodgers never got it. Come on.
Rodgers never got it.
That's sad. Love got it.
No.
Love got snubbed for Caleb Williams. What's with that?
I think it's crazy that, like,
cover snub, bro.
What did you?
No BS. Jordan Love behind Bryce Young and Madden cover line. I hate to say it, but
what?
we've just got that. We've got that aura. We're probably ranking ahead of him in the top 100 to be.
Oh, dude, no bullshit. Shador Sanders might rank ahead of
Shador Sanders. Yeah, Shador is. I'm not saying Jordan Love isn't in line,
who is the player right above Jordan Love, and who is the player right above Jordan Love in the ranking? Trent McDuffie, right below.
Trent McDuffie.
And, maybe like.
Are they putting Penei Sewell on before they put Jordan Love?
Yes. Yes.
They might, dude.
Jordan Brooks right below, Trent McDuffie right above.
Love really does have the worst. I mean, we've talked about that.
He has awful PR, bro.
He has the worst PR of any quarterback in the NFL, like maybe beside Herbert, I guess. But at least with Herbert, it's like
Herbert's got me at least. Like, I don't even push
Herbert.
Love. Like,
you don't even fuck with Love like.
Packers fan, by the way. Yes, no, literally.
No, he's. I don't know what it is specifically about Love that is like made his. I don't know the PR. What's another term for it that I'm looking for? Like trail so far behind where he is as a player. But like it really is his popularity. He's just not that popular for whatever reason.
I think it has to do with just being in line of all these Packers. Like it goes Favre and then Rodgers and then Love, and like even for Packers fans, you're like, this guy's good, but he's not as good as Aaron Rodgers, right? Like, so he kind of lives in their shadow to a large extent, and then of course, Bears fans will make you think that he's the worst player of all time, and they might be louder with the negativity than like Packers fans even are with the praise, perhaps. So like what people end up seeing is like more of the Carolina Panthers interception than the Dallas Cowboys, post route to Wicks or something like that. I just think he lives in the shadows of the previous greats. I think that's what it is. If a different franchise got Jordan Love and he was like their best player in however long, it would be different. But for the Packers, like, we're spoiled and probably take him for granted. And that without that engine, like Dolphins had Tuanon, right? There's no Love Anon. There's no factory of Jordan Love propaganda that so that's why he's not going to get the Madden cover, no matter what his negative play rate is, and no matter how many times he gets the 7th seed. And he hasn't won the division. That's another thing. He's never won the division. He's not won the division. So he hasn't won enough to be like in the MVP.
Right.
Like,
and Rodgers won the Super Bowl in his third season as a starter.
Right. And he was on the bench, like he kind of came, like he never got the rookie year high. Like if you come in and you're a hot shot rookie, your popularity goes up. You sit on the bench for 3 years and come in and you're like the 7th best quarterback in the league. Or 8th.
Right. Rodgers was also like a demon. Love is like really good, but he's not like if
he's not showing up on this list. He's not showing up on this list with Drew Brees.
Maybe in 25 years from now, we'll be looking back saying something different. Who knows?
Maybe. But going back to Brees, I mean, do you punish him for being in this era at all? I could call an audible and move him up, perhaps.
I don't punish him for being. Here's what I'll say. I don't punish him for being in this era. I do think that like what a lot of people would move him up for is his placement on the all-time leaderboards of different volume passing stats, or the individual seasons of volume passing stats that he had, where like, he has all these 5,000. He has like 5 of the 12 or something like that. Yeah. To me, I look at that and I say, I'm not trying to take away from him, but to do very specifically that, I guess, in the 2010s is like the prime era to put up volume passing numbers, even better than now, which I feel like a lot of people don't take into account yet how we've seen that downtrend, and that's why guys throw for less yards. Mostly it's just like posting screen caps of the old yardage leaders from like 10 years ago and being like, remember how good quarterback play used to be, rather than seeing it as any God change play game.
Yes,
we used to watch him throw a lot of passes, that's for sure. So like those aren't the reasons why I have Brees high, I guess. The reason why I have Brees high is because, again, my philosophy of who would I want to draft leans pretty heavily towards longevity, because all of these guys are really, really good. Brees might not have the super psycho, like, let's talk about it among the all-time greatest peaks season, but his consistency, his accuracy, his vision, all of those things ultimately led to kind of unparalleled consistency by almost anybody, and really, really just like, when I get 15 years of top 10 passing offenses, I could do more with that than I can with guys who maybe are going to have like a couple of great MVP seasons. And keep in mind, I'm getting MVP level seasons from Breeze anyway.
Yeah, he won 2 Offensive Player of the Years and never an MVP.
One thing that we should
2011
take
and
into
2014
account,
Breeze.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Breeze had a loss to like Rodgers' very, very best, like, well, this is one
literally
of the best seasons ever, pretty much. So I think Breeze's peak is a little underrated by accolades. I think his longevity in terms of how good he was, really truly like a Super Bowl level quarterback, was high. And I think his playoff performance was overall really good, when I think half the guys on the list honestly have an issue with having like really bad playoff moments. So yeah, I think by my standard, give me Breeze at 6. I might get to it a little bit of a different way, but I still think he ranks really highly.
Yeah, I'm going to keep him at 10 here, but I like the 6th spot. I mean,
I would disagree with him being off a list entirely.
Yes.
I don't know if unless you're going really old, but I want to hear who else you have.
I just saw Theo tugging at his shirt there.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. I don't have him on my list ultimately. Which maybe I could be convinced it's a
well. Let's hear who else he has on his list. Let's hear who.
I've got Steve Young at 7.
Okay, that's where I also
reasons that I kind of already touched on. Like once he got off to a really late start, but when he did start, it was really, really good. Like leading crazy peak, just a crazy peak. Once he started, got a ring out of it, and I like the skill set that he had. It's not just the numbers for me. It's not just. It's a little bit watching and seeing, like, what do you have in your arm? What do you have in your legs? Like, just how threatening really were you? Were you a skill position and a quarterback kind of all in one? I really like that. And I think Young definitely checks that box. So I got him at 7.
Yep.
I think I could be moved to put Breeze up like here, or maybe Otto Graham. I honestly should probably know more about Otto Graham, but I just was like, Unitas is as old as I'll go.
I am going to put Otto Graham on my list if I'm being real with you.
Yeah,
I'm saying screw it. And I'm going to go Graham at 7 where I had him originally. So I guess my top 7, I'm keeping exactly how I had it before this.
Cool.
But then I'll move Marino up to 9 or up to 8.
Yes, please do.
So I'll go Marino up to 8. I'll go Unitas at 9.
Okay.
And then it's really tough. I didn't want to come into this episode debating what the end of my list was going to be, and I apologize, but
we're recording We're recording a little bit early because of the Mexico game, and that kind of took away my debate the end of the list thing. So now I'm at a point where I'm like, I might be firing off. Well,
let me talk about the 3 other guys that I'm really considering for my 10 spot. How about this? It's between Steve Young, who I think had a really great peak, but it was short-lived, and it's tough because I think if he had gotten a chance to start a little bit earlier, or another chance in a better situation, obviously he did in Tampa, but then like he was going for the 49ers earlier.
Yeah.
I probably would have him higher, but can I give credit for games like just straight up not played? I don't know if I can do it. But if you were drafting him, you would probably say, well, we don't have to wait until he's 30 to start him, but who knows who he would have been because he was bad early in his career. So he makes the math on that like really, really difficult.
Yeah.
And there's John Elway.
And you have Montana, who started 164 games at 4, and Young started 143. So it's not true.
Montana was always a little banged up. Right.
Yes.
But I still feel like you do get a decade out of Montana, and that's pretty good. And there's really not many guys who are playing like truly, really, really good football past 1 decade, to be honest with you. Past year 10, a lot of these guys are struggling to find like year 11 and 12.
It's mostly Brady and Breeze, and
it's mostly there's some guys. I don't want to discount everybody, but it's tough. So that's why I gave Montana a break. But maybe I'm giving him too much of a legacy boost, but I'm keeping him at 4 for now. The other 2 guys, John Elway, I'm considering. He was super, super toolsy, a really great playmaker, a little bit up and down himself in terms of just the overall offensive success. But I think you could make an argument that the supporting cast played a part in that. He has some big playoff moments, of course, mostly against the Browns, at least early on, to be fair.
This is honestly my biggest Browns bias is leaving Elway off.
I don't think it's crazy to leave Elway off, though.
That's not a Browns thing too much, is it?
I don't know if Elway's total peak in terms of like his very best season is quite like up there again with like the true tier 1 stuff, but I do feel like he was pretty effective for a long time. The question is, it's kind of like Marino weighting that against like who he had around him, because then late in the career, all of a sudden the supporting cast gets really good and he wins 2 Super Bowl at the ends and kind of punches his ticket into the all-time debate. But like, that's certainly not past him being like a good player, but certainly past his prime. So take that for how you will. And I think in the playoffs, especially in the last year, like he was a little bit more of like a game manager, except for, you know, the one helicopter hit that kind of wins it all back in that regard. So give him credit. And then the other guy is Favre. And I thought that Favre was going to be a lock for this list, especially by my criteria, because he played for so long, right? And he was really, really good for Minnesota in 2010. Well, and he won 3 straight MVPs and won a Super Bowl. It's like, you know, that resume, how many of these guys are we not talking about like, well, what really was their peak? Or, well, what really was like their longevity? For Favre, I didn't think that was going to be a question, but I actually think that it is. I think that he is late career Favre. Back half of career Favre is kind of overrated. I'm a big believer in singular playoff moments don't necessarily make it all, like, you know, tell us who you are entirely, like I've said a million times.
Right.
But with Favre, the sort of gunslinger, I'm going to run around and throw it down the field and make it happen play style, it's good overall. It's good in the long run to have somebody who will push the ball down the field, even if it leads to turnovers, because, you know, a punt really isn't that much better than an interception. Playing it safe isn't always that much better. Give me somebody who will put me in a position to score and win. And because of that, Favre led a bunch of really great offenses, especially in the 90s, and the results clearly were good. They won a Super Bowl and almost won a second. So I'm not trying to take away from that, but I think there became a point where either Favre's athleticism in terms of his mobility left him, or he just was on the wrong side of it too much after like age 30 or so, because in the 2000s, his playoff performances were abysmal. And I don't think it's by chance. I think the issue is that over the long run, over the course of a season, you'll take the high variance aggressive play. But in the playoffs, you can't screw up. It's one and you're out. So that variance means that you're actually going to dip out at the low point frequently. In the 2000s, Brett Favre made the playoffs either with the Vikings or the Packers 6 times. In 5 of those, and I would argue maybe in all 6, he was like, of those playoff appearances, the losses that kicked them out were disasters.
Yes.
So he had 6 interceptions against the Rams. He had 4 interceptions against the Vikings in the wild card. In 2003, in the divisional round against the Eagles, that game goes to overtime. The Eagles get the ball first. This is back when it's just straight up sudden death.
Yeah.
And his defense gets him the ball back. 1st and 10, throws, a complete arm punt to Brian Dawkins on some sort of broken play, and Dawkins returns it into field goal range, and the Eagles win. In the 2007, or I guess the 2008, NFC Championship game against the Giants, the Giants miss a chip shot field goal to win the game in regulation. Overtime, still sudden death. The Packers end up getting it first, and Favre throws an out probably 8 yards behind Donald Driver, and the Giants are in field goal range. They drive 5 yards and they win. And then obviously on top of that, you have the 2010 NFC Championship game, and it's like, what a way for Favre's career, his postseason career, to end.
No, he was a straight up terrorist.
There could not be a higher stakes situation. There could not be more incentive to play it safe, to not try to throw it across your body at 40 years old when you have a chance for a game-winning kick, no matter how long it is, and when you have a chance to make it a reasonable, a 50-yard kick, but a 50-yard kick to get the Vikings to the Super Bowl, and he still can't rein it in at all, no matter the situation, no matter the fact that he played that game in 2010 and he started his career in 1991. So it was his 19th season, but 2 decades, and he still can't do it at all.
Right.
I don't value Favre's overall longevity because, frankly, the results, even in the regular season, were very inconsistent once it got later in his career. But I think that there is something fundamentally about the way that he played that made it really hard to actually go on a playoff run with him and not have every season ultimately end with Brett Favre being Brett Favre in the worst way possible.
Yep.
I'll still give him credit for when he was at his best, because in those MVP seasons, he's only tossing like, in some of them, like 13 picks. And I think the results overall are just a lot better. And he's clearly a different player. But late in the career, even when he's like pushing for maybe some second team all pros or whatever, or the Packers have a great offense, I don't really want Favre over some of these other guys.
Yeah. I mean, when I talk about, like, you're not worried when Brady's back there at all, right? In those cases.
I mean, you know what's going to happen
Exactly.
when Favre's back there.
Exactly.
I agree.
Yeah. As a Packers fan, I imagine you're sweating every time he drops back in some capacity. And maybe it was fun to watch, but I imagine it was a lot of stress.
I imagine it wasn't fun to watch at all. Go watch. I've got a video I'm going to post about this on TikTok, but like, I was crying at the interception he threw in Lambeau in the NFC Championship game. That one, the fact that he did that one in Lambeau,
the Giants
one that was that's one of the worst ever, dude.
Yeah, it's bad.
He misses that thing so badly, it is unbelievable.
It might be a good video, like top 10 worst interceptions thrown ever.
Thrown by Brett Favre.
I mean, legitimately
has two of the top three. And really, they're probably more his fault than Russ, even though
the Russ one is too big. But like, I mean, if we're talking about
Russ, that's designed to go, like, he doesn't have a read. It's like, we're gonna rub this corner and we're just gonna throw that little slant. Like, obviously he should have kept it in the chamber, but like, he didn't put it in the wrong spot really, or make like a completely incomprehensible read. Like, from a process standpoint, the Favre ones are worse. And they do cost the team the Super Bowl ultimately. Like, yeah, it's not quite at that moment, but like, yeah,
he multiple chances to go to the Super Bowl alone on just
big games, end of games. Yeah.
And I promise you, all the interceptions, if you're not going to go watch them, they are as bad as they can possibly be. I mean, you know, the Vikings one, but the other two, I mean, it's a horrible misfire. And the Dawkins one, the Eagles one, is so bad. And the fact that it is 1st and 10, first play of the drive, and overtime after your defense gets the ball back, and immediately they're in field goal range, it is the funniest shit ever, dude. It is unbelievable. He threw that thing.
At the end of the day, he's just like kind of a stupid guy. Like, he just, that's why it's marred by so much controversy. And it's why didn't know any defenses at the beginning of his career. Like, he just is not really a deep thinker. Like,
no, but this is the thing, is that watch those interceptions and you'll find the whole, like, I didn't know what cover 2 was shit a whole lot less funny. And then you start thinking and you're like, okay, why did he have to defraud anybody in Mississippi? He played in the NFL for 20 years. What happened, man? Like, why would you bother to do that in the first place?
Yeah.
I want to have the take that I don't have Favre in my top 10. Obviously, because we just don't like him. But I really feel like, as much as it seems like he should rank very highly by my criteria, I really don't think that he does.
Yeah.
But
by my criteria, however, unfortunately,
you got him in there.
The beginning was pretty good.
Matt, if I were you, I would put Steve Young in your 10 spot.
That's what I want to do, because Steve really was so good for those years.
His peak is
Elway really did it a lot longer. I wonder what you would.
I think I'll go Favre at 8, because he was really good at the I mean, 3 straight MVPs in a Super Bowl is an unprecedented peak. And as bad as the season ended in Minnesota, and maybe if you simulated Favre's career a million times and every year a million times, maybe he'd throw a back-breaking interception in all million. He really might. But that 2010 Viking season, he was elite. I mean, the arm was still all there. He was tall.
Never left him.
He was tough. Really He's rugged in the pocket. Like, he could really slide around and was not afraid to take hits. He never missed a start. That was like his big thing, right? Like, more than any of the records or big throws or anything, the thing that set Brett Favre apart the most is that he is the ultimate Iron Man. So you knew you were getting high-end quarterback play, or decent quarterback play at least, every single game for all those 19 years. Like, never banged up. And I mean, there was a time, like, at the beginning of Young's career with San Francisco, where, like, obviously they were a powerhouse, the Packers were a powerhouse, I think Favre started 5-0 against him. And it would be hard to go back and explain then how, like, Favre has this interception. He's as good as Steve Young, clearly. Like, he's winning all these shootouts. He's got a ring. He does it, and he's really good in the year 2010, even though it's 1998 right now. But he still ends 15th on the all-time list. He still ends 20th on the all-time list. You'd think, like, isn't he already pretty certified? Like, didn't he already kind of unlock this level of play that brought the Packers out of the dark ages into contention for like the entire 1990s? And the answer would be like, yeah, he did do that. His accuracy is probably underrated. Like, tight window throws, like high-end plays, scrambling, improvisation, accuracy. It all comes from the type of athlete that he was, and it was elite. He does have the 3 MVPs in a row, so obviously he wasn't throwing that many picks and costing him that many games. So, and 2010 was really, really, really strong from him overall in the regular season. So I've got him here at 8, but he was a terrorist throughout the entire. After 1998, he was straight up sabotaging his teams in the playoffs. But he was already pretty stamped by them. And if you're losing NFC Championship games, like that's a pretty high bar to even be there. So I don't know.
Sure.
I agree. I think ultimately I stand by my point of his longevity being a little bit overrated because of what he was in the playoffs, but it isn't a guarantee that every single playoff is going to end like that.
And he has a ring. If it did, he wouldn't have a ring.
He has a ring, and his prime is I think a completely different type of player, even if there is still that gambling aspect of him. So I'll go with him at 10, but I stand by my case of why I have Drew Brees over him easily.
Yes.
Because I'm taking that consistency and I think better deep career playoff performance.
Fair. Yeah, that's very fair. Yeah, I can't really, like, maybe Brees should be above him, but I think Brees gets maybe more lost in the shuffle amongst players of his era than Favre did. And
I don't think he does. Like, to me, the big quarterbacks of the era are Brady, Rodgers, Manning, and Brees.
Yeah, I would agree.
Like, that's like there's a clear tier there, I think.
I think that's fair to say. That's fair to say. I don't know, but with the 90s, you'd obviously put Favre in that exact same tier, and maybe even a little bit higher within it of the 90s quarterbacks.
It's funny, while I'm making this list, I'm thinking, like, God, what would we have thought Favre was after that third straight MVP?
I know. He's Patrick Mahomes, right? He's
right.
He's on this GOAT case. He
was on like a GOAT trajectory. I don't think there's any denying that.
He had better tools.
He wasn't even 30 yet.
He had better tools than everybody else. He had better, actually had a ring on like Elway.
If the year were 1999 and we were making a top 10 quarterbacks of all time list, we'd have like Steve Young at 1. Theo.
He's also dangerous because like he was actually like that with the Baker aura, which is like which gives you great PR in the first place. So like I don't know if anyone will ever be as like legendary as Favre in Wisconsin in the 1990s. Like, that is like, growing up, that is the stuff of absolute legend. But sure. I don't know. I mean, he ripped our hearts out so many times too, but I'm going to put him at 8. I'm going to put Fran Tarkington at 9.
I'll hang up right now, Theo. I want you to know that. Like,
what's the problem with Fran Tarkington, man?
I didn't look into Fran probably enough. I know.
No, Matt, you looked into Fran Tarkington plenty. I promise you did.
All right, give me the Tarkington.
I don't know. He was
over Brees.
Over Brees, maybe not. I don't know. Maybe not. But Tarkington, the reason why I wrote, again, the end of this list was cut a little bit. You had to call me and we're like, we're recording right now because of the Mexico game. Maybe I could have worked it out for Breeze's favor if I had a little bit more time. But Tarkington
how Tarkington was like ahead of Breeze before like the working out of things. Usually I feel like it would be the other way around.
Well,
but
Tarkington has an MVP. Let's see Breeze's trophy case first of all.
Sure.
Fran Tarkington was the original scrambler. I think is the main thing about him is like he was to a completely different level than ever before, like extending plays. He was better at that than Breeze was. I mean, Breeze's thing is like getting the ball out as quickly as humanly possible to a playmaker. Like that is what made him special, was like pre-snap, get it all right. But he really did not spend a lot of time with the ball actually in his hands. And I ding him a little bit for that, maybe because like maybe the onus is on other people to kind of actually advance the ball down the field. Whereas with these elite playmakers, like they are able to be more of the offense themselves, if that makes some sense. Sure. And with Tarkington, that is certainly the case, because like, I don't know if like 10 plus seconds reversing fields a couple of times type moves. And he ended his career with more touchdowns and yards than anybody else. So obviously Breeze kind of extended that benchmark as well. And a lot of the people on this top 10 do, with like, by the time they ended their career, they were kind of new at the top. So within his era, like Tarkington was Drew Brees, right?
He also ended his career with with another NFL record and still holds that record to this day.
The sack yards all-time record.
Yes.
Yeah, his extensions may have come at a price, but I think he was really good. I think that he generated offense on his own to a pretty crazy level. I mean, the Vikings were like kind of a new expansion team when he took over, so they weren't anything very good. And then he got traded to the Giants, and they were, a one-win team when he got there, and he made them respectable. Tarkington, I could be talked down from. I could definitely be talked down from. But he kind of fits my mold in a couple of ways of like, I like these creators. I like these play extenders. I think that they're inherently a little bit more valuable than the pure pocket, like get it, spit it out as quickly as possible guys. That's just always been my kind of philosophy, is I want somebody who can run a little bit. So I put Tarkington at number 9 with the records that he holds, and I agree with his play style, but maybe that's aesthetic bias, Matt. But he has an MVP, doesn't have a ring though. So Breeze does have a ring. So maybe I can put Breeze at. I'll put Breeze at. I can edit this and put Breeze at 9. But I want to shout out Fran. Shout out Fran Tarkington.
Shout out Fran. He's one of those other guys that, retired in the 70s with substantial yardage totals, even more than Unitas, right? Unitas had 41,000 yards when he retired, and Tarkington had 47,000 yards when he retired. To do that, like starting in 61 and ending in 78, like that is pretty special to be able to play in that era and put up those kind of numbers. So I don't think you're totally like crazy to shout him out here, but he's not on my list.
Yeah, I'm not sold. I think I might rather have Breeze over Tarkington. That sounds a little less controversial, and maybe for good reason.
Yes.
Yeah, I'd have to do some more research into Fran Tarkington. So I guess he seemed like more of like a top 25 type of guy rather than a top 10 guy. But again, I'm just really high on Breeze as well.
Yeah,
I'll put Breeze at 9. I'm not. You could tell, I think, in the tone of my voice that I'm not really feeling my Tarkington argument.
But you'll put Tarkington at 10.
Well.
Who are your other options? Who are your other options here?
I'm glad you said something, because if you didn't at least shout out Tarkington, I'm sure every comment would have been Tarkington.
Where is Fran Tarkington?
Well, dude, I'm already preparing for the fact that we're gonna get comments about like Aikman not being here or Bradshaw. Like people are just
Bradshaw.
I don't know.
Roger Staubach. I could maybe see.
Actually, Roger Staubach would be not necessarily my first off because I have Elway and Young.
Yeah.
But he would be like right there, pretty dang close. And then we start to get into like, well, if we're cool with short peaks and we're cool with like projecting future career, there's some current guys who have
Josh Allen,
really good
Lamar
peaks,
Jackson,
Allens and Lamars, and they start to get into the argument of, especially when we go to top 20. I think Staubach's a good shout. Aikman and Bradshaw. Bradshaw is good in some moments, but has a really slow start to his career where he gets benched like several times. He's got some really good playoff moments though, and he does have some pretty efficient seasons, but I think he's kind of properly respected in terms of his accolades, and then his career ends pretty quickly. Aikman, also kind of the same thing, like really accurate and efficient, but is on some really good teams.
Lamar and Josh are really interesting here at this 10 spot. I think I first heard the Josh top 10 take from Carson Breber. And when he said it, I was like, what are you talking about? Like, what? He is not top 10 all time, bruh. Like, he's just not. Like, he hasn't accomplished enough. He has 1 MVP, 0 Super Bowls. But then you start to think about it really of like, if they all were there in a draft in front of you, like, yeah, you probably would take Josh Allen pretty high. And he does have this 5-year stretch where they win more regular season games than anybody else without a Super Bowl in NFL history. And when you look at Josh Allen's playoff EPA, like it's right up there with Tom Brady's and Aaron Rodgers's, and not quite as high as Patrick Mahomes, but it's in a very, very good tier. So it's like he's winning all these games and he's a good playoff performer with some really like bad breaks with losing shootouts. And it's like, well, like you get to like 10 and yeah, you start, there are guys with flaws in their case. Like Fran Tarkenton doesn't have a ring. He took way more sacks than Josh Allen did as an extender. Bradshaw, like what if Josh Allen got to play with the modern equivalent of the steel curtain, right? Like what if he was with the Legion of Boom? Well, then what would happen? Like obviously Bradshaw benefits a lot from that and definitely better receivers and all this. So I'm kind of moved, but then I'm also maybe even more moved by Lamar, who I would put as a better regular season performer for maybe even a year longer. Not the same type of playoff efficiency, but when neither of them have a ring, like how much does it really even matter? I don't know.
I think they're just a little too far away for me. I think the peaks are good, obviously, but they haven't done it for that long, and the playoff success is a little mixed.
Yeah.
So I don't feel like they're nearly as like undeniable as like a Mahomes is. But in terms of like the offenses that they're elevating, like it does feel pretty rare where a lot of these guys before, again, even the all-time greats are really, really dependent on being in a room with good receivers to allow them to actually put together efficient offenses. With Lamar or with Josh Allen, I mean, there's parts of their offenses that are good, but in terms of receiving talent, it hasn't been very consistent, but I feel like the results have been pretty good for both of them regardless.
Yeah.
I think Allen has had kind of more good playoff moments than bad. He's just not gotten wins in a lot of his good playoff moments. Lamar, it's pretty rough. It's not like truly horrifying, like completely disqualifying, but it's not good. And even with Allen, you could maybe say, especially after this fumble, dude, you could say there's a level of like the Favre stuff that I'm talking about where being that gambler clearly cost him in sort of a nonsensical way. It's not nearly as bad as Favre in the 2000s, like at all. And even when you go look at the turnovers from that game, I mean, like the Cooks one is a pretty excusable interception where it's like, dang, it's a little underthrown, but you know, it could have been caught easily.
Around, The fact that resulted in an interception too, instead of just like, it popped out and flew 10 yards downfield incomplete.
Yeah.
I guess I'll put John Elway at number 10 then.
I think Elway.
I think I'll go Breeze at 9, Elway at 10. Elway catches a lot of slander, I think, but I also think that he had more on his shoulders than an average quarterback. I mean, he was kind of at the forefront of the shotgun revolution, and as a number 1 overall pick and as this really highly touted prospects like maybe just didn't fit into that right area for a long time. And then once he did, obviously then he started to win rings. I don't know though. Like when you look at overall, like is he really, are you really taking John Elway over Lamar Jackson? I don't know.
It's tough with guys like Allen and Lamar because I feel like it's, for most quarterbacks, there is not really a Hall of Fame, or I'll even say for most players, you're not really doing the Hall of Fame monitor thing for their whole career. The only guys that really happens for, or like not even the Hall of Fame monitor, but like the GOAT case monitor, that really only happens for Mahomes, Brady, like guys who are so certified, or like Brady winning 3 Super Bowls so early on in his career already put him straight up on that case of like, well, now he's chasing Montana, right? And then people
are really uncomfortable with it. Like even with Mahomes, people are really uncomfortable with it, even though it's pretty clear, just because it feels like, well, these guys are such legends and you don't know what they were. And it's disrespectful to have so-and-so above them when they haven't even played their full career. It's really tough when it's guys who have not won a Super Bowl.
Right.
Then it feels like it doubles down. I think that they're within the top 20 range. I really, really do believe they're that good. I do think there's a little bit of like, you're just evaluating the skill sets here, and that's favoring some of the modern toolsy guys versus what it used to be. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like there wasn't a Lamar Jackson in 1983 when John Elway got drafted. That's just like not where the sport was. So I try to compare based off of kind of like the era where now we've seen these super athletic quarterbacks like really start to break out and become more the norm. In fact, really, it's like it's starting to turn into, if you aren't athletic, if you're not mobile, you're the problem, rather than like there's a handful of guys who really can move. Yep. And I think if you look at the starters next year, like it's really getting like that. It didn't used to be like that. And I think that frames Elway's athleticism poorly when you don't take it into account relative to its era.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with Elway. I know that the stats in the high end peak years aren't like crazy eye popping, and the down years maybe are what really stand out, or the bad moments. But he went to 5 Super Bowls. He did win an MVP. He played in 234 games. The other guys I haven't ranked is like Joe Montana, which,
oh shoot, I didn't even realize that.
Yeah, Montana's which maybe you should be pounding the table to put him in. But I'm really like, I don't think he played enough. And I don't think he had the peak. Like he doesn't quite
his peak
fit
was
my
pretty dang good, man. He won multiple MVPs. He won a bowl and was like getting MVP votes before Jerry Rice was there. Like I really, really think Montana is top 10. I didn't realize that you didn't have him. I understand the case against him. I truly do. And I still think I'm going to ride with a lot of people who would have him at 2. A lot of people would say he's a 2 quarterback. I can discount it a little bit from there. And I honestly, I thought you had a good argument for Marino. And I know I'm going to work on a top 25 list after this and maybe go video by video for TikTok or something. But
maybe this ends as more of a rough draft. But I think for now, I'm going to stick Elway here at 10. I like the toolsy guys. I like the toolsy guys. He's been to 5 Super Bowls. He's won 2. And even though I'm sure the analytics heads, the box score heads from that keep track of NFL history will be like, you cannot have Elway anywhere near your list. You cannot have Namath anywhere near your list.
Namath is an interesting shout.
They got that dog.
Namath is, I don't think, close to the top 10 list, but Namath does get underrated because his touchdown interception ratio is bad, even though that was kind of more with the times back then. They just threw more interceptions, and I know people are really, really like against that, but you gotta adjust for era at least some when it comes to the IIT numbers, because it's ridiculous now that nobody throws interceptions ever. I mean, there's guys who will lead the league and they don't even throw 20. That was not throwing 20 interceptions in a season was unheard of for anybody in any given season at one point, because the ball was like just a soccer ball. And
Yes.
everyone had a concussion all the time.
Yeah.
It was 1924,
Yeah,
right?
it's crazy. I mean, you think of Brooke Breeze and you think like, oh, what a great decision maker and somebody who just, smartest, safest, like will happy to take the check down type of guy. And from 2005 to 2016, he's throwing double-digit interceptions every year. He's throwing 22 interceptions. He's throwing 19
interceptions.
He's throwing 18. He's throwing 17. Like Lamar will never throw 19 interceptions probably.
Lamar doesn't throw that much though.
Yeah.
Lamar doesn't put the ball in the air as much. But this is what I'm saying. I really think Rodgers is ahead of his time with the interception numbers. Because it's like the shift has happened so quickly. While Rodgers is still playing, he'll never get like the credit he probably deserves for some of those low interception seasons where he really is like above and beyond everybody else.
Yeah.
I really think he deserves props for that.
I remember I did a presentation one time when I was a senior in high school. And of course, English presentation, it's time to talk about sports, of course. Yes. And I did the Rodgers GOAT case. And I talked about how at the time he had the highest yards per attempt mark, highest touchdown percentage, and best interception percentage of all time. I'm like, if you're throwing less interceptions, more touchdowns, and getting more yards per attempt than anybody else all the time,
that's pretty good.
You're number one.
You're number one.
And I still kind of that presentation still does kind of live in the back of my mind. I was like, there was a time when more good things were happening and less bad things were happening to Aaron Rodgers than anybody else. I think maybe EPA would disagree with me there because they'd say, "What about sacks, Mr. Theo?" And that was Rodgers' probably.
Some would argue that
issue.
A sack is worse than an interception.
They are drive killers. It cannot be denied that sacks are drive killers, first of all, and they are sticky as quarterbacks go from place to place and go from situation to situation. Yeah. So sacks are a part of the evaluation that I did not include in my
if I was your teacher, I would have debunked you for that. I'm not gonna lie. I would have debunked you right there.
The teacher was the head coach of the football team, so he probably should have stepped in.
He probably should have stepped in.
He should have said the EPA says you're dead wrong. The EPA says you don't know shit.
I would have put Montana on here above Elway, even though like I agree with like if Bill Walsh thought Steve Young was better, like he was probably right. So that's kind of my stance on it. But yeah, I mean, I just hate Elway because he's the reason that I don't have a Super Bowl right now.
You fumbled. That's your fault. That's not John Elway's fault.
That's the reason why you didn't make a Super Bowl. The Broncos then went on to I'm not misremembering this. They were not very competitive in a handful of those Super Bowls. Correct?
The Browns would have been.
Would they have been?
But
trust me, bro. The Browns would have when the Browns make a Super Bowl, it will be competitive.
But one more time before we get out, each of you give me your top 10 quarterbacks of all time. Matt, we'll start with you.
Tom Brady, Peyton Manning, Aaron Rodgers, Joe Montana, Patrick Mahomes, Drew Brees, Otto Graham, Johnny Unitas, Dan Marino, and then Brett Favre.
Theo.
I went Peyton Manning, Tom Brady, Patrick Mahomes, Dan Marino, Aaron Rodgers, Johnny Unitas, Steve Young, Brett Favre, Drew Brees / Frank Tarkington, John Elway.
And then I went Tom Brady, Peyton Manning, Otto Graham, Johnny Unitas, Patrick Mahomes, Aaron Rodgers, Steve Young, Dan Marino, Joe Montana, and Drew Brees.
Put Brees on the Twitter graphic.
But that'll do
Manny,
it.
Move Tarkenton up to the top 3 on Theo's graphic, please.
Please. Thank you all so much for tuning into this episode. And as always, from your favorite fellas here at Stay Hot, we will catch you on the Flippity Flop.